Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this formal meeting of the Public Protection and Communities Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Andrew Key, the Chairman of the committee, and the Vice Chairman, Councillor Paul Skinner, is also in attendance. I would particularly like to warmly welcome Superintendent Lee St Quinton, Head of Service for Partnerships and Operations, who's attending his first meeting of the committee today. Very welcome. Can I remind you that this meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I'd like to welcome members of the public who are watching this live. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I'd like to remind you all that your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. I'd like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There's no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park and wait there. And can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent for the duration of this meeting. And also can I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. When invited to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit to make it live. Then press it again when you've finished your contribution. So we'll now move on to the formal agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Emily, could you give the apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Austin, Councillor Nicola Clark and Councillor Gray.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of councillors' interest. Do any members wish to declare an interest? No? Okay, item 3, minutes of the previous meeting of this committee held on the 30th of July 2024. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting held on that date as a correct record. And the minutes can be found on pages 7 to 18 of the agenda pack. I just have one slight correction before we start on page 3. Under the third bullet point, Councillor K.E. Lee requested it be recorded that she felt the real terms loss of grant funding rather than grand funding for citizens' advice. Any other changes? Okay, could we have a proposer, please? Paul, and seconded Mike. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. Any abstentions? No. Right. Item 4, announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. As we have a very busy agenda today, officers are reminded to take their reports as read by committee members and are requested to summarise the key points from their report in about 5 minutes. Members are also reminded of the importance of succinct questions and contributions. As I say every time, make sure your question's shorter than the answer. Can I also take this opportunity to remind members that when you are unable to attend a meeting, you need to make arrangements to find a replacement through the usual process. And that applies to all members. I attended the visit to the Happening Knife Crime Initiative tour in Sleaford on the 10th of September. It was very interesting to see the work being done to raise awareness of the impact of knife crime, and I'd highly recommend the tour to members if there are any future opportunities to visit. And I think Councillor Pepper, you'd been as well. And Paul. Yeah, lovely. So, but if anybody else is able to go, I really recommend it. It's fantastic. And just to make everyone aware, I'm intending to have a 10-minute comfort break before item 8. So, Executive Councillor announcements. Councillor Corey isn't here. Is she online? No, we'll leave that. Councillor Morn, sorry.
There aren't any specific announcements from me, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mrs Sue Woolley, Executive Council for NHS Liaison, Community Engagement, Registration and and the rest of it. Is anybody here for... Councillor Matthew.
There are no specific comments from Sue. Okay.
Councillor Patricia Bradwell, Executive Councillor for Children's Services, etc. Councillor Ray.
Once again, no comments, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Daniel McNally, who is here.
Yeah, nothing from me either, Chairman.
And any announcements from senior officers, please? No? Good. Okay, so we'll now move on to the main items of business. And we'll first sit as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee under Section 19 of the Crime and Justice Act 2006 for items 5 and 6 on the agenda. So item 5 is the Stay Safe Partnership Annual Update on pages 19 to 28 of the agenda pack. And it presents the annual update on the work of the Stay Safe Partnership. The actions required by us are to review the content of the report and offer comment on the continued delivery of the Stay Safe Partnership project in the proposed format. It's going to be presented by Catherine Smith, Community Safety Strategy Coordinator, Prevention Education. We also have Claire Newborn, Head of Community Safety, in attendance to help answer any questions. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. So we just wanted to give a brief around the Stay Safe Partnership and the work that we've been doing. The Stay Safe Partnership is a multi-agency arrangement where we collaborate with a range of partners. We also have a one-stop directory that schools, so primary, secondary, colleges, can access a range of different resources, workshops for students and staff. And that is made up of our core partners' work as well as a range of other trusted agencies that are all quality assured, so schools can be assured that the product that they're getting is the right message for the children at the time. Our core partners can be seen on page 20, and we just wanted to flag around the level of reach that we have. So in terms of all of the agencies that are advertised on the Stay Safe directory, we reached a total of 106,000 staff and students this year, which was a rise of 32.2%. We also, as you can see on page 21, part of our core delivery is the Stay Safe Days that we offer into secondary schools. So originally that is what we were commissioned to deliver, was secondary school delivery work. We have since expanded into primary schools as well, which is based on the level of staff that we have. So we can only deliver so much based on the kind of capacity of our team. As you can see by page 21, you'll see all the different subjects that we offer to the schools. So they access that during one day as a drop-down day. And I know Councillor Rowe has come recently and had a look at the day and really enjoyed it. And obviously anybody else who would like to come and see the day, you're more than welcome to do that. This year we managed to get into 100% of our secondary schools and delivered to 22,574 students. During the day, we get a lot of disclosures, and it's worth noting that actually that's really important to show the effectiveness of those days, as some of those young people may never have come forward to get the support and help that they required with the range of different issues that we discuss. Some of the highlights from the year that we've had, we had a film competition. On page 23, you'll be able to see the winners of that competition, and if you want to go and look at their videos on YouTube, I highly recommend them because they're amazing. And Councillor Rowe came to our premiere, and we really appreciated that support. So that was part of Safer Internet Day, and it was all around inspiring change, and the young people got together and filmed different videos around how we can use the internet in a more productive way. We're also really proud of our parental engagement work that we do. This year we've had 637 parents attend our online safety workshops, which we hold biannually, and we split into primary and secondary school age range to kind of support parents with how they can keep their children safe in that online space. And we also had 260 parents who joined our Navigating Teen Relationships workshop, which supports secondary age parents with different elements around that kind of abusive peer relationships and how they spot the signs and where to get support. We are planning this year on expanding our support, so we're looking at our directory in terms of how we can support parents better. How we're doing that is we are breaking down different elements that we're asked regularly by education provisions to support in. A lot of that is around parental controls within that online safety world, so we're making it a little bit easier for parents to access that information in a place where they need it. We've also started to add parent fact sheets for after to send out whenever we've actually been into a school. So where we have gone in and delivered a workshop either on online safety or on healthy relationships, and our police colleagues do this as well, then we send out parent fact sheets to tell the parents what we've been speaking to, how they can carry that conversation on at home, and where they can get more information should they be worried about that issue with their child. We're very proud of the young people voice that we get and how we input that back into our strategic elements. So we've got 10,487 responses from children aged 11 to 18 this year through our Stay Safe survey, and we have used that to input into our neighbourhood policing teams in terms of where children and young people are feeling safe in their areas and where they're not, and we know that that information has very much been appreciated and used on the ground to support that young person voice really making an impact. That can all be seen on pages 24 to 26 as well if you'd like to read more around that. In terms of our future plans as well, this year we are employing a targeted officer who is going to work as part of the antisocial behaviour intervention team, and they will be offering targeted work into schools in areas that have been flagged as being an issue with antisocial behaviour. And that is all the highlights from the Stay Safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So do we have any questions or comments, please? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed on your chart that you've put together on page 21, knife crime, you've sort of only got that in year 9, the way I read the chart. And I'm wondering, because of the bad publicity in various regions around the country where knife crime is quite prominent, whether more effort should be put into that in the forthcoming year. But I was pleased to read how well your programmes have been received by children and teachers, and I'm also pleased to see that you're not resting on your laurels and you're going to look at what you've done and how you can possibly improve that in the forthcoming year. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. In terms of the offer to the Stay Safe School that you mentioned, that is our universal offer. So all year 9s will get that content, but we also offer it as a reactive session. So where schools come to us and say that they have had an issue where a young person may have brought a knife into school, then our police colleagues will then go into that school and deliver the content directly to them as a targeted response as well. And we also have the Knife Crime Centre within Sleaford, so we would also send that information out to those schools in those areas so that they can send those young people into that targeted project, because that works with groups of 6 to 8 students, so it's more effective in trying to change that narrative with those young people who are getting brought into that.
Thank you very much for your reply.
Yes, thank you. And when I was at the happening in Sleaford, I know they have an adapted sessions for primary school children and younger children, which seem very adaptable to however old the people were there. It was excellent. So that's good that you're promoting that as well. So well done. Next we've got Jackie, Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for a very, very interesting report, actually. It's quite an eye-opener. Thank you very much. There's two things I was going to ask about, please. In the days when I was a teacher, one of my duties was to teach personal and social health education to 16-year-olds. And it's very, very interesting. And one thing we did find is that when we were going through the various safety topics, which we did, we found it very necessary not just to talk to them and to get their feedback, on bits of paper, or what did you think about this, talking about it. We actually had to take them through to voice the responses they would give in a difficult situation. So if somebody approaches you, what are you going to say? Say it now, practice it. We had to actually practice the responses so that they became a real thing, as opposed to just, oh yes, I'm going to respond this way, because they don't know how it sounds and they don't know how they're going to look. And we also practiced behaviours where they would not demonstrate victim behaviours. For instance, if they're walking through the street, stride out, head up, no shuffling and all the rest of it, because we know that attracts more harm. So we found that it was very necessary to take it on a step further to get the kind of response that we wanted from 16-year-olds. I can't speak for younger children. But the other thing that was a comment, but I have a question, Chairman, if I may. I'm very pleased to see the number of disclosures that you get after your visit. That's very, very positive, but it also worries me, because I would want to know, why didn't those children disclose to their teachers? The teachers are around them, they're in a place of safety, and yet they don't disclose until complete strangers come in and give them a workshop when they are getting this education, or some of it, within school. So that for me is a worry, along with who are the children disclosing to in schools where you haven't been able to visit. So I think there's a safety gap there, and I don't know what you can do to address it. You're doing all you can. But it does worry me, the number of disclosures, when really those disclosures should have been made before, long before you ever got there. So thank you.
I think in terms of the interactiveness that you were speaking about, we do a lot of that, and even with our younger children. So even though we're telling them you need to block and report, now what we have in our sessions is we actually get them to show us on their popular games where do you block and report, so they can actually show us how to do it. So we definitely implement that kind of practical skill level, because a lot of teachers have fed that back in terms of they say they know it and then they actually don't go and do it. So we fed that back in. In terms of disclosures, I think it's a really difficult one, because obviously that child or young person has to be in a place where they're ready to open up and they're ready to tell someone. And I think sometimes with the level of the content that we deliver, it triggers something and that light bulb moment in their heads, and actually then they're ready to. And sometimes it can feel more comfortable disclosing to that person who's not close to them, because they've got that detachment. But obviously with any disclosure that we always get the school involved at that stage, because they are best placed in order to support that young person through any interventions that need to be put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Next we have Karen, Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. It's a really good report. Well done. It's very detailed. It gives a lot of information, and you're obviously doing some really good work. I wondered if it would be possible for me and other councillors to find out which sessions, because there are several schools in my patch, I'm on the Ermine, which sessions have been delivered where in the area that I represent. And you mention, I think it's page 24, outcomes, impact and outcomes. I wonder if I could find out a bit more about sort of what the data is for the area, because I'd just like to know what's going on in a bit more detail in my patch. But well done, this is a really good report. Thank you.
Thank you. We have that data split down. So in terms of like the young person voice coming through, please feel free, anybody who wants it, to get in contact with myself and I can send that to you. We get it through quarterly, so you can get a really up-to-date picture around what young people are seeing, and we can have a conversation about the different trends, but I can break it down into area about where you are and stuff as well, so that's fine.
Thank you, Karen. Stephen, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Like you, I visited the Happening Knife event. Really well worth going to. If any of the councillors want to, it's got to be a good day out, shall we say. You learn a lot. I understand funding is an issue as of March next year. Hopefully we'll be able to find some funding to carry that on. I also attended, as said, the Stay Safe Days at one of my local schools. My granddaughter was actually one of the people that attended, and she got plenty out of it. But I think equally important was the staff valued it as well. They said what a good event it was and how valuable it was. So once again, my recommendation would be to councillors, if you get the opportunity, go. Don't stay, you don't have to stay all day. Go, have a look at all the different activities that are going on, and they're well worthwhile and valuable to the young people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just one question for me, really. Looking at and this is something Jackie mentioned, Councillor Brockway, about the schools that we're not reaching. Because on page 20, it says that 80% of primary schools have accessed one of the items from the directory. What can we do to reach the other 20%? That will be my first point. And then on the Stay Safe Days, obviously they're only available to secondary schools. Have we had any thought on extending those to primary schools? So just two bits there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of reaching the additional primary schools, part of it is that is due to capacity. So obviously primary schools is an additional element that we added on. Originally we were only funded for secondary schools, and primary schools kind of came later. So actually a couple of years ago there were 0 primary schools, and now we're in 80%, so we're in quite a lot. But in terms of our capacity, we are reaching kind of the top level, as in this year we're booked up until June already, and we're only in September. So that kind of is kind of just the issue. If we're funded more, we can reach more. In terms of our primary schools, so a full stay safe day wouldn't necessarily work for how primary schools work, but they do get all of those additional elements delivered into them, because each of our partners deliver primary school content as well, so they can pick and choose which ones they want. So for example, in our online safety element, we deliver a full package from year 2 up to year 6, as do our healthy relationship colleagues, and our police colleagues are in with year 5 and 6, so they can pick up the information that they're getting in that secondary school, but for a primary school age level that is appropriate. And I was going to say something else, but I've had a brain fog, so that's not so good. But yeah, if they have issues as well in primary schools, so say a primary school has had an issue around malicious communications or hate speech, then we will go in and offer that as a targeted response as well, just like we would do in a secondary school. So we really are working in that kind of universal and targeted area in primaries as well.
Thank you, and I think we should commend the schools for actually fitting all of this into their timetables. And I know at the Happening they have about 8 at a time, which must be a logistic nightmare for a primary school or a secondary school to release a few children at a time. And I did suggest, with the swimming pool nearby, schools that go there could perhaps do the 2 and send some to the Happening and some swimming if that's possible. But it is difficult, I know. So it's a credit really that all these people are getting through the programme. So well done. Thank you very much. Do we have any more comments? Lovely. Well, thank you for all of those questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item, and I propose that the committee has reviewed the report and supports the continued delivery of the Stay Safe Partnership project in the proposed format. So could you please raise your hands if you agree? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for that report. So item 6 now is the Safer Lincolnshire Partnerships Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group Fraud Prevention Activity Report on pages 29 to 42 of the agenda pack, providing an update on the work undertaken by the Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership in relation to fraud prevention during the last 12 months. We are required to review the content of the report and offer comment on the delivery of the work of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership's Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group. It's going to be presented by Vicky Salmon, Community Safety Strategy Coordinator, and we also have, as I mentioned earlier, Leeson Quinton, Head of Service for Partnerships and Operations and Attendance, to help answer questions. So over to you, Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So it's been a busy 12 months, and I just wanted to give a quick reminder that although we've been calling it the fraud group, our specific priority is around digitally enabled fraud and ID theft, and these are crimes that take advantage of advances in technology. And our main task we've been focused with is to reduce victimisation of these crimes through targeted prevention activity. So just a reminder that anybody can be a victim of fraud, but our most vulnerable residents are most at risk. And people can be vulnerable for many different reasons, but these can include age, locality, digital skills, and lack of social connections. Fraud has been shown to have a significant impact on our vulnerable victims, not only financially, but also on their health and well-being. And the work of the group is to ensure that residents are informed and better able to protect themselves from being a victim or being a repeat victim. And then just wanted to highlight, we have a broad membership of our group, but over the last 12 months we've welcomed new members from a charity called Links Digital, Victim Support Lincolnshire, South Kesteven District Council, City of Lincoln Council and Barclays Bank, so we're really pleased to welcome them on board. Okay, and in terms of prevalence, fraud is, I think the stat is around 40% of all crime reported is fraud. But for Lincolnshire, over the last 12 months, there have been over 4,000 reports of fraud made by Lincolnshire residents and businesses. And that amounts to somewhere in the region of £17 million being stolen. So action fraud reports are received locally by Lincolnshire Police, and they assess all the reports and identify those most at risk of fraud, and those are triaged manually by our local fraud specialists. They're risk assessed, and anyone that's assessed as high risk receives a direct contact either from the neighbourhood policing team or a fraud specialist. And it's approximately 11.5% of the reports we receive each month are from high-risk individuals. So we undertake a wide range of activity, and the first area of focus for us is around raising awareness at community events. And so we've been lucky, I say, to have a wide range of partners, and Lincolnshire Police and Lincolnshire County Council are able to deliver multiple talks in local communities, community centres, banks, various local hubs, and we're able to add a calculation to this work that looks at preventing fraud and preventing the impact of fraud, and that work has prevented over £80,000 of losses to the individual and society. In terms of collaboration, we've been working with North Kesteven District Council at their Riverside event and also at their Heckington show. Links Digital Charity are working across the South and East Lincolnshire Partnership area. They've carried out a number of activities, and one worth particular mention is that in Holton-le-Clay, that was attended by Peter Levy, and he was able to share his personal experiences of fraud with the group. The Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner have worked with partners to develop a fraud prevention pack, and these were distributed across the whole county in February and March. We did attach an appendix so you can see the widespread that those packs have been across the whole county. Over 5,000 packs were sent out, and really they've had excellent feedback on those, along with numerous communications activity to support the packs. And finally, Age UK have been working specifically in West Lindsey, but then also our community safety team have joined up with their information bus and attended doctors' surgeries and shopping centres, so really being wherever people are and having important conversations with them there. Where we can't meet people face to face, we have been carrying out radio talks and also podcasts. We make sure that our literature is up to date, and this year we've added new information around fraud, abuse of position in terms of financial abuse, and information about economic abuse with domestic abuse. And luckily our Stay Safe partners are also delivering messages in school. We know that HSBC has delivered sessions on money management and fraud to over 3,000 students, and the online safety sessions around exploitation content have reached over 2,000 students as well. The next area of focus for us is making sure that colleagues working with vulnerable people have information about fraud. LCC hosts an e-learning on their staff learning platform, and over 1,600 staff have accessed that course, and that's 13% increase on previous years. And it's not just staff from within Lincolnshire County Council that access that. District Council staff, health staff, education teams, carers, charities and voluntary organisations. This is really good to access this because staff can do it with whatever meets with their time commitments that they have. Again, Lincolnshire Police and Lincolnshire County Council have been delivering sessions directly to professionals, banking staff. We had one particularly for county councils. We were able to do that in a webinar format or in face-to-face. And again, it's estimated that that work, providing that preventative information, would save individuals and society over £120,000. And finally, to make sure that staff working in specialist areas are completely up to date with their information, we've had two excellent training delivered for fraud specialists, focusing on the psychology of scams, victim impact and the use of positive language, and then also around the coercion and control techniques used by these criminals to steal from victims, making sure that we have a no blame, no shame approach to supporting victims. We found that it's very important to make sure that these fraud prevention messages are available to everybody across the county, and we recognise that not everybody can access mainstream messages. So we've put some activity into a few particular areas, the first of that being focusing on people lacking digital skills and access. So as I said earlier, we're working with Links Digital, a charity focusing on digital support for individuals. They can help individuals with internet-based issues along with the devices that they host. Their staff and volunteers are Friends Against Scams trained, and they're continuing to seek new locations across their area. North Kesteven has digital hubs across their district, and the staff and volunteers are proficient in IT. We've started delivering sessions within their localities and had some excellent feedback, and we actually have 2 more coming up next week. And along with this, Age UK Lindsay has a dedicated digital support officer. They work with individuals and the community, and I'm aware that their focus this year is on the East Coast. We also recognise that people speaking English as a second language may not be able to access all the information that we have. Working with the census data and awaiting new data available from our police colleagues, we are now able to support individuals speaking up to 29 different languages, and where we are at the moment is waiting to understand how we can best share that information with those people. And our final area in terms of making sure people can access messaging is around people with sensory impairments and additional needs. We've been liaising with the Lincolnshire Sensory Service. We have dropped in at a number of their drop-in sessions, particularly on the East Coast. We've had webinars delivered in British Sign Language. They've been promoted and attended by partners. And now we have also identified a number of other BSL and accessible format information, including Braille, easy read guides, and we're just now concentrating, working with staff, making sure we can get those to the places that they're most needed. Our most recent piece of work is around a small group focusing on preventing the re-victimisation of individuals. This group is attended by Lincolnshire Police Fraud Protect Team, Lincolnshire Community Safety and Trading Standards, representative from Victim Links, Victim Support, and Age UK Lindsay, focusing on West Lindsay. And at the moment, the group has identified their priorities, we've confirmed referral pathways and points of contact, and now we're looking for opportunities to collaborate. In terms of some of the ways we've been collaborating, Trading Standards have recently delivered some bespoke training for victim support, making sure that they have information about fraud and consumer law. Where individuals need specific support around getting their money back and reimbursement, partners are able to refer directly to our Lincolnshire County Council Scams Officer. So each partner has a key role to play here. Lincolnshire County Council Scam Prevention Officer can support people in the return of their stolen money, can install call blockers, provide prevention advice, and really support people with some of the well-being issues that go on around being a victim of fraud. Victim Links can receive active referrals and provide information to people. Victim Support can provide emotional support alongside the other crimes that they support people with. Age UK Lindsay can carry out similar activity for specified time in the West Lindsay area only. Lee, did you want to say a little bit about Lincolnshire Fraud Protect offer?
Good morning. So from a Lincolnshire Police perspective, we work very closely with Lincolnshire County Council, mainly around the re-victimisation risk within the county. And that is very much around identifying those who are at high risk of re-victimisation. We go through a scoring matrix of how we assess those individuals. And then we look at a bespoke approach using scams officers or Lincolnshire Police officers or PCSOs, and those people get a bespoke visit generally where we can look at how we can stop them and putting safeguarding measures in place to stop them from becoming victims again, and also look at how we can assist the onward investigation through our pursue elements, through our investigative teams and specialist fraud investigators within the region as well. So from a re-victimisation element, we do try and identify the most who are at risk of further harm and look at how we can support them with their ongoing needs.
Thanks, Lee. So just to finalise, the final objective of the group is to make sure that the digital and online information supports all of the other information we have around the prevention activity. We have a broad spectrum of social media campaigns carried out both nationally and responding to local events, such as providing targeted information through the Links Alert facility. And we also use the Town and Parish Council newsletter regularly. And a final note there, we work with the providers of Connect to Support Lincolnshire to make sure that the information they have on their website is both up to date and relevant. And then finally, a good news story. The National Trading Standards Scams team have created a victim charter focusing on a commitment around support and empathy for individuals, dignity and respect, taking a no blame, no shame approach, making sure that we communicate clearly with anybody that's experienced fraud, and most importantly, supporting their well-being. The charter was signed by the Chief Executive of the County Council on in August 2024, supported by Councillor Mrs Bradwell and Councillor McNally, and we've carried out some comms activity around that that's been quite successful. Our next step now is to ask our partners to sign the charter too. So overall, significant activity across the county with very, very limited resources at present. We've been able to support individuals on a one-to-one basis across the community and in a digital format. So thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Could I have any questions, please, or comments? Karen, Councillor.
Thank you for another really good report. Just picking up on the last point you said with very limited resources, do you feel that if you had more resources you could do an awful lot more work? I know the answer's always yes, but seriously.
Absolutely yes. We have one scams officer for Lincolnshire County Council and myself supporting him. We have 1.5 officers probably at Lincolnshire Police supporting the whole of Lincolnshire. So definitely the more resources we have, the more people we can help, definitely.
Just to come back, Chair, I'll remember that when it's the alternative budget.
Thank you.
Martin, do you want to just come in?
I'll come in that because budgets generally sit with me around the community safety aspect. So we are working up a business case to increase certainly the LCC footprint within financial harms. So it is already on the agenda, so it'll hopefully prevent Council Lee having to kind of put it in an alternative budget. So we are working through it, and we hope to make some announcements where we are actually able to increase the staffing requirements that are looking at financial harms. Because whilst it certainly has and nationally is known and proven to have a significant impact on health and well-being of individuals, and therefore there's always an onward consequence into the adult social care system, which actually if we can do more financial harm activity earlier on downstream, actually we might be preventing our onward kind of crisis areas within adult social care as well.
Thank you, Martin. I think Mike, Councillor Clark, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. Very interesting report to read. I had some questions on the prevention that you'd listed on page 31, and then when I was reading further on in the report, you'd almost answered all my questions on page 35. Are you going to do an extra bit of work, or try to, on awareness pre-Christmas? Because that's obviously where people are likely to fall foul of scammers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, fraud and scams is a problem all year round, absolutely. But yes, we definitely do. We know that online scams in particular always peak. So we'll plan on starting in late October, specifically around the Black Friday, the Cyber Monday. Yes, absolutely, we will make sure that we do that. I think I'm on the radio in the next couple of weeks and I plan to start talking about it there as well.
Thank you. Now I think it's Stephen next, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The biggest defence against this is the awareness and getting the information out there. So I sort of appeal to everybody here, certainly, to use their social media to republicise the information that we've got. I'm sure Vicky can point you at everything that we've got to share. But my appeal mainly goes out to my fellow councillors. We have 70 councillors. If they share it to what is probably 2 social media outlets, their own personal ones and their council ones, that's an awful lot of people it gets to. Many of us, or some of us, are on more than one council. And again, appeal to you to get that information out to your fellow councillors on your other councils. Get them to share it on their social media. Make sure that the parishes are doing something. I know the districts are, but again, just keep promoting it. It costs nothing. It's not political. It's just information for people, and that information will make a very big difference. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Very interesting report. These reports are fantastic. I love this committee, I tell you. There are two things I wanted to say, please, if I may. Well, one's a statement, one's a question. I think it's important always to remember that when we talk about the fraudsters, sometimes we can think of them as the other, something else there. But fraudsters can be people you know. Some friends and I, some years ago, were completely scammed by somebody who was within our group and had been for many years and was a thief. And was a fraudster, and it was very clever stuff, and it shocked us all. But interestingly, the first response that we got from other people when they found out was, "You must feel completely stupid." And that then becomes negative. So my response was, yes, of course I did, and that's why people don't say anything about it. So, you know, so the fact is that fraudsters are not necessarily people that you don't know. It's quite shocking, but, you know. But the other thing is, something's been popping up on my news feed this week, interestingly, about fraud that I hadn't heard, where some supermarkets compare their prices with other supermarkets. And it's emerging now that the comparisons are not like for like. Is this, you're smiling, so this must be something that's on your radar. And to give a specific example, there was one packet of chicken which was compared with the cheaper supermarket's packet of chicken, but the cheaper supermarket had 60% chicken, while the more expensive supermarket, who was saying, oh, this is a price comparison, only had 30%. Now, is that fraud? And if so, what can you do about it? Thank you.
I think that one probably falls to us. From my perspective, you'd have to look at the labelling as a whole, or how the advert's presented as a whole, and that would include small print, just to see if the information is hidden in there or not. But the comparison should be fair and meaningful, and if that's been picked up nationally, then I suspect that it'll be picked up nationally by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute. If it's happening in print media, if it's happening online, then you can refer details of that to the Advertising Standards Authority. That would be my approach to it, would be to notify them. The Advertising Standards Authority can then ask the advertiser to justify the claims that they're making. If they can't do that, they can issue a ruling to get the advert pulled, and it shouldn't appear again until it's been amended and is fair. And we do use that as a means of getting adverts, incorrect adverts pulled.
Thank you. I think Martin just wants to come in as well.
Yeah, I think just to echo Mark's comments about, I think it's going to be nationally picked up because it was actually featured as part of the BBC Panorama programme last night. So those that haven't seen it, it's probably worth a watch. So I think it'll be something that will, the supermarkets having been kind of exposed via the BBC Panorama, that'll be picked up. That was last night? It was last night, yeah.
Thank you. Could I just, while we've got Mark talking about it as well, and while we've got you here, one of my questions from page 83, which is actually a trading standards report, was about the number of referrals by district to the trading standards on scams. And North Kesteven have only got 3. I just wondered why it varies so much from district to district. And what, I know it's a trading standards question, but while everybody's here, I thought it worth asking. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I can answer that question. So the referrals to the LCC scams officer come from wherever and whoever needs it. Particularly, they're higher in other areas, particularly the Lindsays, because we have a strong working relationship with Age UK Lindsay, and they make sure to include scam-related questions in their assessments of individuals. But in terms of why there are fewer in North Kesteven, I couldn't answer directly as to exactly why, but they really just come from wherever they're needed. But perhaps we should pay a little bit more attention, do a little bit more comms in that particular area. But we have really good contact with North Kesteven District Council and the neighbourhood policing team in North Kesteven as well.
I only ask because in my day job, I visit a lot of vulnerable people, and I caught someone in the middle of being scammed. On their computer, somebody had taken their computer over, and they were just literally in the process of putting their passport details, their national insurance number, their bank details all in, and I pulled the lead out of the wall. I didn't know what to do to cut them off, and they were in the process of it, and it just brings it home really. And it is these vulnerable people who are living alone, and this person had been recently bereaved as well, which made it even worse. So.
absolutely recent bereavement is definitely something that could make somebody more vulnerable. If you wanted to message me afterwards with the details of that individual, I know you probably stopped that, but we can help them with some protective behaviours around that.
It was a long time ago, so I can't do that. But yeah, thank you. Martin.
Yeah, just on the element of bereavement. So we are kind of working with the coroner's registration as part of our prevention activity to kind of broaden that, because, you know, again, I oversee the coroner's registration service, so it's a natural correlation that we've seen, and we're actually going to try and implement some prevention activity around financial harms on the kind of registration part of the deaths notification.
At the point of registration, that's when they're the most vulnerable, so it would be perfect to do it at that point. Yeah, thank you. Liz, I think, sorry to keep you waiting.
That's fine, thank you. Apologies for being so late. I got caught up in, as I left home 45 miles away, sort of the beat machinery moving convoy from hell, frankly. So that's why I was so late. But I'm here now. So just coming in on some more about Links Digital and obviously other people who provide these services are available, but I know that they are excellent because they're coming to our community hub quite regularly, and they're not just offering stuff on scams, they're offering a great deal of stuff for people who are vulnerable, who actually need all that help. So it isn't just, you know, one thing they're doing. So I've just brought up something I've been sending out to residents. They're putting in NHS support, digital skills, stuff from the LCC like blue badge applications, government services, scam awareness, personal support. So they're doing so much. It isn't just about scam awareness. And I think actually if you're someone who needs scam awareness, you're someone who's vulnerable anyway, aren't you, who hasn't got much idea. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge how good they are. And there's so much support out there, but it's never enough, is it? Because obviously there's new ideas coming out from scammers all the time. But I really do recommend the people who are coming to our community hub because they are excellent, and anyone who can get them is very lucky. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do we have any more? Any more comments or questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one on Appendix B. Is it possible to have, or in the future, an actual map of the county with district divisions? It is quite interesting, but I think a map will be more hard-hitting, and with regards to what was said earlier with members, I think when members see what's happening in their own sort of area, that's when it'll sort of progress a bit better.
Yes, we can do that, no problem at all.
Thank you. I've got another question, actually, on the victim charter that we've just signed. How is the County Council going to be held to account against the charter? Thank you.
So we create an annual review every year, and this is a new piece of work, so we'll be sure to reflect on the commitments within the charter when we present the annual report, and we take the data on a quarterly basis, so if we notice any patterns or problems, we would react to them very much quickly. But this time next year, I'll present you all the information to make sure that we're meeting with the commitments within the charter.
That's great. I expected you to say that, and that's great. Thank you very much. So I think that's everything. I propose that thank you for your comments, by the way. I propose the committee has reviewed the content of this report and is satisfied with the delivery of the work of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnerships Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group. Please could you raise your hand if you agree? That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you to the people who presented under that section. I have brought the crime and disorder section to the beginning of the meeting, so I hope that didn't catch you on the hop, because it's normally at the end. But I wanted to give you the chance to go first, so thank you very much. And we are now going to revert to sitting as the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee for the remainder of this meeting and move to item 7. Which is the HMI CFRS Progress Against Areas for Improvement and Action Plan, on pages 43 to 78 of the agenda pack, setting out the outcomes of the revisit to Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue by His Majesty's Inspectorate for Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Inspection Team in July 2024, relating to the cause of concern for values and culture. and also provides an update on the progress against the 14 areas of improvement. The actions required by us are to review the contents of the report and seek assurance on the progress against the service improvement plan attached as Appendix A. It's going to be presented by Mark Baxter, Chief Fire Officer. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you for that, and morning everyone. I'll start off with just giving the update in regards to the revisit that linked into the cause of concern. So just a reminder of the background. From the previous inspection, we was issued a cause of concern that was relating to how we have our staff to understand EDI, culture and values through the organisation. We had 5 recommendations that were aligned to that cause of concern. From the last inspection, 2 of those recommendations were discharged. However, we still had 3 outstanding recommendations. Those recommendations related to how we communicate through to our staff in regards to issues relating to EDI, how we ensure that our equality impact assessment processes are robust and understood, and also that we did do enough in regards to positive action in regards to recruitment. The HMI CFRS team came and inspected us in July, specifically looking at those areas. They did quite a wide-ranging inspection. They gathered a lot of evidence and data prior to the teams coming in, and then they spent 4 days physically visiting our stations, visiting specific focus groups, looking at interviewing some of our managers, some of our department heads, and also myself to get a sense of how well we had progressed against those 3 recommendations. We got the final outcome of the letter that was released on the 12th of September, and we're really pleased to confirm that the HMI team stated that they were pleased to see the significant steps the service had taken in response to the cause of concern that we issued. We recognise the considerable work that the service has carried out to support these improvements, and as a result, we now consider this cause of concern to be discharged. That's a particularly a positive and pleasing outcome that we fed back to the organisation, and predominantly so that we can recognise the hard work that all of our teams have put in regards to improving the organisation in these areas. But we've also been very clear with a message to the service that this is just the beginning. It's just really validating that the direction of travel that we have put in place for the last 18 months is making a positive impact. So it just really shows that there is more work to do in this area, and we will continue in this area to ensure that the service can be the best service it can be for our own staff. In regards to the wider improvement plan, so as it was stated, the inspection did highlight 14 areas for improvement. So as a service, what we did, we pulled together a service improvement plan, and within that service improvement plan, we have identified 70 specific actions that we work through to address those areas. That is managed, assured and scrutinised internally through our department head meetings, through our senior leadership team meetings, and also through a service management board. They meet monthly to give progress updates on all of those 70 actions. So far, we are looking at 18 of those actions have been completed. 2 of those actions potentially are going to miss the timelines that we've originally stated, and all the rest of the actions are looking on target. The target date that we are looking for those actions to be signed off is the autumn of 2025. That will coincide when our expected next full inspection from HMI will be coming into the service. And then just a final update in regards to HMIC progress is just for information, HMIC FRS are currently consulting on changes for the inspection process that we are expecting to be within Lincolnshire in about a year's time. The main areas that they are looking at changing, that they are for the first time going to be looking at evaluation of the Fire Authority's governance, oversight and scrutiny arrangements. HMIC FRS has previously not been involved in a a judgment on how services have been governed and their governance models. This is going to be specifically looking at on how the fire service is held to account, both internally within the service, but within the county council through meetings like this meeting here. Next area is that there will be a greater focus on leadership at all levels. Previously, the HMI have focused particularly in regards to middle and leadership, but there's an absolute focus of leadership and how is that being developed and how is that embedded at every single level within the organisation. They are looking at bringing together two areas of efficiencies. Currently, they look at it in two specific questions. They're going to be looking at that to wrap that around in just one broad question about how efficient we are and how effective we are with our resources. And then the final change will be about how the fire service works with local resilience forums, how we are proactively supporting resilience within the communities. We're linked in regards to community risk registers and how we work with emergency planning services and all other partner agencies to increase resilience within our communities. So, Chair, that's an overview of the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Alex, do you want to come in first?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add there, members will be aware that over the last year there has been a spotlight nationally on fire service culture, inequality and diversity and those areas that Mark's talked about. So it's especially pleasing to see that an independent inspector has come into our service and recognised that significant progress that our service has made in addressing those issues. So I think that, you know, from our point of view, that's a real reassuring step that an independent inspector has recognised that progress.
Thank you. I'll go first, if I may, just with a question. Then I think we've got Jackie and we're all everybody. I'll go first then. Right. So on page 77 of the letter, it does say that we've been less successful with positive action for other protected characteristics like ethnicity and sexual orientation. What can we do to improve that? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And through the discussions that we had with HMI at the time, we did recognise that is an area that we also need to work harder at to be an employer of choice for all protective characteristics within our communities. We absolutely had a focus on how we can improve and increase women within the fire service because we know that was an area where there's some very tried and tested actions that we put in place to be able to increase those numbers with the sole purpose that it does increase that diversity of thought throughout the whole of the organisation. We're utilising that learning to ensure that we can do that across the board with all protected characteristics. So we are looking at where we can link into community groups. We're looking at widening where we can educate and make awareness through our recruitment directions to ensure that we can be an attractive an employer to all characteristics. But we need to do more further work to understand what barriers exist for people wanting to join the service. So we have created a new talent learning and resourcing team, and we brought in specialist people within our organisation that are absolutely focused in regards to how we can improve our recruitment strategies. That's starting to gather momentum, so we are expecting to see a positive improvement by the next inspection report. So we do know that it's going to take time to see those benefits come through to the organisation, but it is absolutely the next phase of how we want to try and increase diversity.
Thank you, Mark. I had an interesting discussion at an on-call fire station, which was all men, about increasing female firefighters. So it's good to talk about it. Great. So, Jackie, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report, and well done on the massive progress. It must, be taking so much work. Can I just be clear, because it'll affect my questions? The letter on page 75 to 77 on the 12th of September, it gave a cause for concern, but the end of the letter seems to imply that it's been discharged. So are there any causes for concern left? That before my question, that is.
Yeah, just to confirm, there is no cause of concern left. That's just the layout, the letter. They always start off what the cause of concern was, and then at the end they say what is the outcome.
Well, that's even better. Congratulations. I mean, that's huge. Thank you. Right. So a couple of questions on this. They clearly, when they come to see you, they want you to do more. The words there, for instance, improve the understanding and use of equality impact assessments. Now, you've done that. So you've obviously improved your understanding. But when they're talking about improve your understanding, do they actually just say it as vaguely as that, or do they give some guidance about what they want improved? I have a couple more, if that's all right, Chairman. So that's the first bit.
No, they won't give specific guidance on how we achieve it. What they are looking at is they will take the judgment from looking at documental evidence, but more primarily by physically asking our staff, how well do you understand EQIA processes, the assessments through the organisation and how they applied, and that's where they will take the judgment from.
Thank you. But then, do they give you feedback and show the areas that weren't understood?
Yes, they do through one-to-one interviews and give an overview from myself. So we have got a good understanding of the areas that we do need to improve.
Thank you. My last question, Chairman. I notice on page 77 it asks you to be aware of various protected characteristics, including sexual orientation. And that's a kind of odd one, you know, because people don't have to declare. In fact, it could be deemed as quite intrusive. You know, are you supposed to go around saying, let's have so many gays, let's have so many LGBTQ plus? You know, it actually has got other implications. It isn't just, you know, tell us your sexual orientation if you want to. Those who are happy to reveal such personal information might actually skew the outcome. So, I mean, how do you deal with that? Thank you.
You're absolutely right. It is a challenge, and the challenge is that not everybody wants to declare what their sexual orientation is, and you quite rightly say that there isn't a statutory duty to declare at all in regards to that. I think it really fits into probably the wider cultural position we want to be as an organisation, and it's to create an environment where people don't fear or don't have any concerns or don't have any barriers to declare what their sexual orientation is. I think we need to move and I think it's a society as much as it is for a fire and rescue service, that actually the labels of whatever your sexual orientation shouldn't be a barrier, or it shouldn't mean that you're treated differently, so on and so forth. So there is something that we need to look and analyse why people don't want to declare what their sexual orientation is. So there will be reasons why people don't feel comfortable to say what their orientation is, and I think really what the HMI's reason for having that as a measure, it has more of a secondary measure of actually what sort of organisation the culture exists within the service. So it's probably it is absolutely for me less about data and percentages and figures. It's more about, have we got an organisation where people feel comfortable to express what their orientation is.
Thank you for indulging me. I'm going to fight you on this one. Yeah, I think it's like a race thing. I think there's a problem here when we need to ask what people's sexual orientations are. I don't give a monkey's what people's sexual orientation is. It's their private business as far as I'm concerned. All I would want to know is, are they going to make a good firefighter? And I think there is a danger that as part of this equality thing, we intrude too far into people's lives. You know, their race, their sexual orientation. And I think the problem isn't so much that why are they uncomfortable, but why do we need to ask it at all? Why do we need to ask people's private business to make the judgment? We should be so welcoming that it isn't an issue, same as race. Who cares what colour somebody's skin is? The pigment in their skin, who cares? The welcome should be there equally for everybody, and it's almost a fail in the sense that we have to ask the question at all. So I'm trying to push it a bit further, Chairman. I know it's not for you to do that. You've got to do what you've got to do. But I do think it's becoming a problem. Thank you.
And again, my observation again on that is there is also an element that we need to ensure that our communities have a trusted view of the fire and rescue services. So there is an element of actually we should reflect our communities, and there is a question that we need to make sure that we keep challenging ourselves. That is there an unconscious bias? The fire service has a stereotypical perception out into the communities, because if any of that bias exists, and it would make somebody second guess whether they're going to dial 999 because of an emergency and so on and so forth. So when I talk about the culture, that's really what wanting to tease through. I just want to have that absolute assurance that the public got the confidence that they can trust and reflect that the fire service reflects those.
That's a brilliant answer. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go out of turn because it's Nigel's turn really, but Karen's hand shot straight up during that discussion. So is your comment to do with this, Karen?
Yes, it is, and I get what you're saying totally. It's not about when someone applies saying you've got to write down what your orientation is. It's about, you've got to remember that people live very closely when they work as firefighters. They do these shifts, and like at Lincoln North, it's very close living accommodation, and it's about having that culture where people feel that if something is wrong, they can go to someone in confidence and they'll get that support, isn't it? That it's totally about the environment, not about people writing down I'm this or I'm that. It's totally about having that supportive environment, because I get that. And you have to think as well, when people are marginalised, it impacts on their mental health. So again, it's about knowing that there is support there in place should they need it. So I get what you're saying totally, but I agree, no one should have to write on a line and say, right, I'm this or I'm that. But it is about being confident, and being confident that if people go out as firefighters to fight a fire, if someone is abusive to them, that actually that'll be tackled and it'll be dealt with. It's completely about that, isn't it?
Thank you. Sorry, Nigel, but I just didn't want Karen have to come back later after we'd moved on. So it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. The inspector describes a cause for concern as a serious or critical shortcoming in a service's practice, policy or performance. And I can see a lot of work has been done, and it's really reassuring to see that it's now been discharged. So I'm really pleased, and that's really positive news to hear that. Regarding my questions, Chairman, you asked the first question that I was going to ask. Jackie asked the second question I was going to ask. And Karen summed it up by something else I was going to say as well, but I can't let it go without saying anything. So just regarding the topic of ethnicity and sexual orientation, can you just tell me a bit more about the nuts and bolts of, I mean, you said yourself it's just beginning, and going forward there's still more to do, but the nuts and bolts of it, is it being spread out at by the SLT team at stations? And I think you said there's extra specific personnel been employed to deal with it, but just the nuts and bolts of it, and tell us a bit more about it, how it's going to be happening going forward. I mean, will there be, dare I say, different toilets and things like that? Can you just tell us a little bit deeper the nuts and bolts of it, please?
So in regards to trying to improve the ratio with ethnicity across the county, we are predominantly on-call employees, so we do have a relatively narrow catchment area in regards to where we attract our staff from. So we do need to, and we are doing, we're linking into demographical data to understand where the higher populations of ethnicity are within our county. We can look at doing proactive recruitment within those areas and identifying specific community groups to really to raise the awareness of the role of the fire service and actually trying to promote it as being a career of choice in regards to that. We're doing more research and working with other agencies such as AFSA, so that's the Asian Fire Service Association, and taking lots of learning on how we can understand cultural differences and cultural norms and how we can get them embedded within the fire services in regards to that. We absolutely, and that links into the equality impact assessments. We are doing assessments on all of our buildings and estates across the county with a I'll call it a new lens through our eye line, is actually to really challenging, are our buildings and our physical buildings appropriate to support all faiths and all religions. We do have to take a pragmatic approach on any changes that we need to put in place, because so it'll be very much a long-standing programme to develop any improvements in regards to those areas. So really it's going to be a step change in regards to how we move away from our traditional recruitment campaigns, which were quite broad brush. and we're quite traditional in regards to using social media, using word of mouth, etc. So we're going to be far more targeted in regards to the areas where we have less representation within the service.
Thank you, Nigel. Had you finished? Yeah, I think this whole subject has created such a lot of discussion. I would perhaps recommend that this comes back to scrutiny in a year or so's time, so that we can see the additional progress you've made on these personnel and people issues, which are so important. So thank you all very much for that. Now we're going to Mike and then to Colin.
Thank you, Chairman. About recruiting, obviously, you're very restricted in the pool that you can select from, and I think maybe the inspectorate has missed that target. I know of experience in Carlisle when there was a similar inspection, and the number of people they could pull from to try and encourage to enlist into the fire service or the police service was very limited, and you can't order people to do it. So I think you've got a big task there. The question I've got for you is on page 59 of the report, and it was on about inspectors' qualifications, where obviously you've got to get people better trained. And I was wondering, do you have to send them on courses, or they're able to do e-learning in order then that you don't lose them from your workforce for long periods of time? Thank you.
So yes, so this is relating to our protection arm of the organisation, and yes, it is quite a specialist area, and actually this area is having a significantly increased in regards to demand and specialism to ensure that we can administer our duties to within protections, keeping buildings safe through regulation and through inspections. The training programme is very specific for inspecting officer, can take up to 3 years to bring somebody through a service to ensure that they've got all the right qualifications, and not only that they've got the confidence on the exposure to be able to deliver on their responsibilities. It is a pinch point for us within Lincolnshire and also nationally. There is an ever-growing spotlight in regards to protection, particularly in regards to when you put it in the backdrop of some of the learning from the Grenfell Tower inquiry report that is shining a light on regulative legislation and responsibilities. So our strategy is absolutely always, if we can bring in trained people into our organisation, that would be great. But we also know that that's a real challenge for us across the whole of the sector, because everybody's asking the same questions. So we're always looking at if we can recruit in, but we're also we recognise there's a development pathway for people within our organisation to give them the skills, to give them the training, particularly in this specialist area. We absolutely are very alive to the fact that there is a risk. We can invest and we can train people, and they can leave to go to work for another organisation because they are going to be in high demand. So part of that within our offer to our people, we are constantly looking at how we can ensure that we can make Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue the right place for people to come, to work and to stay, and that does include investing in our people. But specifically in regards to your point is the blended approach in regards to training. There will be some e-learning that can be done. There'll be very specific courses that have to be attended, and there'll be specific qualifications that have to be attained over a 3-year period to ensure that we have got those qualified people.
Thank you, Mike. And Colin.
Thanks very much. Councillor Pepper, Nigel just asked a question of Mark about discussing the basics. You know, what toilets are people going to use? I just wanted to say that I'd attended a meeting at Alford Fire Station with Alex and with Ryan, and it was a genuinely fundamental discussion about things like that took place in this context. We were talking about the inspection, and it threw up some stuff that really informed me. So the bit that I took home was protective clothing for women needs to be very different from the small size protective clothing for men. which had been the habit. And I just wanted to say it genuinely is being addressed at a grassroots level, because I experienced it at Alford. And as I say, it threw, pardon me, threw up some stuff that it's clear that the organisers, the top brass, are thinking about things, and the staff in the fire are talking about things. Just at the moment, there was perhaps lacking an opportunity for that dialogue to take place, and it took place when we were there at the fire station. It was good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that. If I can just take the opportunity, actually. So, yeah, it is how you've recognised those conversations are happening throughout the organisation, and our journey is absolutely partly being directed from the feedback from the people that are actually working on the stations, because they are living and breathing the impact of it. Just for information, myself and Steve Topham, we are leading on the national review of what the future of our personal protective equipment will look like, and there's two significant areas that we are ensuring that we're going to be able to provide a standardised approach for the whole of the sector that absolutely meets the challenges of contamination, to make sure that our kit is make sure that all of our firefighters can have the best protections from contaminants when they're operating in those high-risk environments. But also it's ensuring that we have PPE that is absolutely fit for purpose for all genders. And you're absolutely right. I think the service in the sector has moved on from just having small, medium and large. It is absolutely ensuring that we've got the right PPE that fits all shapes and sizes, all genders, because then ultimately that's what's going to make our firefighters safer.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, Alex.
Colin,
I just
you
wanted
come back
to make
first,
clear
then Alex. That I was in awe of the quality of discussion, and it did cover that stuff, and it's really positive. And it's fundamentally, the issue is being addressed head on and in a really constructive way. And I'm not sure if that came out in my... I wasn't being mealy-mouthed in any way. It was a really genuinely interesting evening.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Matthews has given me an opportunity, actually, to just plug the annual visits that Councillor Corey and I do to every fire station in the county, along with our senior leadership team, and we always extend that invitation to the local council member for that area. Many of the members of this committee, Councillor Pepper, Councillor Brockway, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Matthews, have all attended in recent years those annual visits, and they will know firsthand the quality of those discussions that we have, and all of the kind of topics that we've discussed today. I can say from first-hand experience that these have been discussed openly and honestly with our on-call firefighters across the service and our whole-time firefighters, and it is very clear to us that these are being discussed openly at all levels of the organisation. And one particular thing I wanted to mention was the EDI training that was rolled out sort of after the initial inspection. The feedback we had normally with these kind of training things, staff don't always engage with things, but every single fire station we went to in that following year, everybody mentioned the quality of that training and how it made them think about their own unconscious biases and things like that. So I just wanted to plug that and remind members that there is that annual opportunity to actually meet the firefighters in their community and discuss these types of issues with them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, it'd be rude not to plug tomorrow's event then at Leverton. It's public consultation. There will be hopefully a new fire station at Leverton, and I'm reassured this morning that it covers all the points necessary. So it'd be just rude having a lead in like that not to pick it up. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think that concludes our discussion on that item, and I propose that the committee's been assured on the progress against the service improvement plan attached as Appendix A, and congratulates Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue on the significant progress it's made to overcome the cause of concern. And I would just add that it would be nice to have an update on this culture change in 12 months' time. I won't be here, but somebody else will be able to pick that up, I'm sure, because it would be good to hear how much more we're progressing. So please can you raise your hand if you agree? That's unanimous, thank you. Now, I am going to have now a 10-minute comfort break. I stupidly had 2 cups of coffee before the meeting, and I really shouldn't have done. I was going to plough on, but there's no way I'm going to get to the end. So we'll restart. Okay, welcome back everyone to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Trading Standards Impacts and Outcomes Annual Report for 2023-24. This report is on pages 79 to 92 of the agenda pack and summarises the work undertaken by the Trading Standards Service in this last financial year. The actions required by us are to review and comment on the report and seek assurance on the delivery of the Trading Standards Service in 2023-24. And it's going to be presented by Mark Keel, Head of Trading Standards. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I don't intend to say too much about the report, but quite happy to take questions on that. What I would like to propose to the chamber is that this will be the last time we present the Trading Standards Annual Report in this format. I've had some discussions with Martin, and what we would like to do is bring smaller, more detailed reports focusing on the areas of work that we undertake rather than this wider general one. So the sort of things that we're proposing is to bring something on illicit tobacco and vaping as a paper. The food annual review, where we would leave, but bring it forward to the first meeting of the financial year. That would be to review the previous year's performance, but also to give you an opportunity to scrutinise and comment on the plans for the upcoming year as well, which we think is important to get some input on that. We would look at animal health, which we've brought on occasions for review. Something on underage sales. Have a general TS roundup of anything that doesn't get caught anywhere else. And again, look at business advice as a separate paper and just pull out all of the areas across the work that we do where we're providing either the service free of charge or it's a paid for service. And we would look to introduce that from February next year.
Thank you, Mark. I think that's an excellent idea because each of these areas all creates a lot of discussion in itself, and in a big report you can't go into the detail that we want to know about. So does everybody think that's a good idea? Yes, there's a lot of nodding. Yeah, so I think everybody's in agreement that it should be the way forward.
Thank you, that's great. We'll get those booked in with Emily.
Thank you. And could we ask then for comments on this report and any questions, please? Mike, and then Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. If you could indulge me, and could our colleagues bear with me, I've got a number of questions. I'm not trying to be over picky, but some of the report I was very interested in. On page 81, item 211, you've put a list there of new working arrangements. Have you reviewed those yet, and sort of what results do you think you're getting from those new arrangements? Thank you.
This is the first year that we've actually implemented them as a full year. So they came into place in June last year. So we've got about 10 months data on those. What we can say from that, and I've tried to include some comparison with previous years around inspections and some of the outcomes, is that generally it's been quite positive in terms of inspection and the numbers there and the focus that we've been able to put on that. And it's also been positive in terms of the training for officers who are studying for specific areas of their qualification. We've not seen anything that is too detrimental at this point, but it's early days. It's something that we'll keep under review. There are one or two areas where the numbers are slightly down around illicit tobacco seizures, but generally that can be explained due to us adopting a different approach, less full raid and seizure, but more use of things like test purchasing to get evidence of offences for closure orders, which are quicker and provide us with an immediate cessation to the activity, rather than prosecuting, which allows the activity to be ongoing. So Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's majorly detrimental that we've picked up at the moment, but like I say, we will keep that under review going forward.
Thank you for that. On page 82, you mentioned court costs. It might be a silly question to ask. Do we get any of that money, or does it stay with the courts?
No, court costs all come back to us.
So it helps to balance the books, as it were.
It does help to balance the books, and sometimes we see it in sentencing. We might get a slightly smaller fine, but we get a bigger proportion of the costs, which is good because that does come back to us, whereas the fine doesn't.
Yeah, thank you. And on page 83, item 315, it says, there's a comment there, his work formally recognised. Have we got a particular individual we can praise for that? Or is he a mystery man?
Yes, that's the Scams Intervention and Prevention Officer, Andy Turner, received that award for his work with scam victims.
Okay, and on page 85, I was keen to see on the food standards actions, one action was taken about the 37 samples that were sort of classed as incorrect.
Right, all the samples that come back incorrect, we provide advice if they are a local business. If the food product has come in from another authority, then we notify that local authority for them to advise the business, and we do follow up with repeat samples if the failure is considered serious enough. So if we were looking at something like allergens, and we'd ask for something allergen-free, and it had come back with the presence of allergens, then we would provide the advice and then go back and retest to make sure that advice has been acted on.
Thank you for that. And a further question, on page 86, I was pleased to read on 5.3 and 5.4 your actions that you've taken on closure of various premises. I think the whole team needs to be congratulated on that. And my last question, if you can still bear with me, on page 91 it mentions EU funding. Will that stop shortly?
Yes, I think that was funding that we received for an officer who was seconded to the Business Lincolnshire team and was carrying out work with new startup businesses. That funding did come to an end in June last year.
Oh, right. Thank you for indulging me and answering all my questions.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Have you finished? Yep, thank you. Jackie, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the report and for the work you're doing. It's such important, but all this protective work is so important. There's two areas I just wanted to raise with you. I regularly receive updates on dodgy electrical equipment. I get the email and I post it, and I post it on social media, and whenever I do, somebody always comes back and says, I've got that. So it's not just one or two. I just wonder, is there any way of, do you have access to these lists that could be sent to councillors on a regular basis so that we can then send them on to parish councils and social media? Because I've been surprised at how many people respond. So that's my first question, Chairman.
Yes, is the short answer. Obviously, we see a lot of the product recall information that comes out, and that's what we share through our socials. But we also have access to a product safety database, so we can see all the products that other authorities are reporting where there's issues that have been identified with the safety.
Thank you. I would find that information very helpful. Thank you. The other thing is something that I'm concerned about. Some residents have been coming to me recently, even though it's about my area, it's a generic question about building, where new builds, where things have gone wrong, so lots and lots and lots of snagging issues to the extent that the properties are unlivable, unsellable, unmortgageable, but everybody is kicking it down the road, including the builders, the guarantors, apparently the building inspectors, but I haven't checked that. That one I haven't checked. But when they're in a situation, where people are in a situation when they've got all these problems and they can't get anybody to take ownership of it, is that a point where they should come to you, or could you advise on how they could be helped, please?
Right. It's not an exact area for trading standards. Some of the issues possibly, but not all of the issues, because if you're looking at goods, generally speaking, it wouldn't include the house itself, but might include bits and pieces that are within it. So we would probably, the advice I would give in the first instance is to speak to your solicitor and get some advice, the person who's done the conveyancing, and see what they can do. Obviously, there is the NHBC who should be guaranteeing the problem. You get your 10-year guarantee with that. So obviously make the complaint through to them. They will have a complaints procedure. If they're not dealing with it, then my next step would be to go to the complaints procedure. But ultimately, if they're not getting joy, then yes, notify us. If we're seeing particular patterns and trends in problems that are arising, then we can look into it. We can see what advice can be provided. The law does allow for class action, where groups of people can get together to bring action under the Consumer Protection from Overhead Trading regulations. We can maybe look at Enterprise Act action, because these are contractual issues as well. So yes, it is worth reporting ultimately if they're not getting any satisfaction.
Thank you. And Mark, can I just ask you about retention of staff? This is something that Mark was talking about with the fire service. It's obviously an issue all across Lincolnshire. The health service probably has the same issues. Half of our current officers, it says on page 88, have less than 5 years experience due to the loss of previous staff who were very experienced. So what can we do as trading standards to help retain staff? And given the amount of money that we're spending on training the new officers, which is fantastic, we've got new officers coming along, is there anything that can be included in their contracts of employment, meaning that they have to stay with us for so many years after they've qualified, if you get what I mean? Thank you.
Yep. In terms of retention, we have been really lucky. The vacancies that have come up have been through people who have retired or have had to leave through ill health or other normal reasons for people leaving. We've had very few up until this last year of people who have left to move on to pastures new and carry on in the profession. COVID has obviously changed the way that people work, and there's more home working now, and some authorities are offering, one of our officers who left has to go into Hertfordshire for 2 days a month. The rest of the time they can work from home because their job is predominantly providing business advice, which doesn't necessarily have to be done on the ground or face to face. So it's a changing arena that people are working in. We're also seeing more competition from national regulators. I've looked at the vacant positions that are advertised on the Chartered Institute's website this morning, and OPSS, Office for Product Safety and Standards, they are advertising for enforcement officers. And again, this sort of draws out of the pool of available people. So that there's quite a lot of competition there. In terms of what we can do to retain, I think we do offer a good package in terms of training qualified staff, letting them keep their competencies. We give them adequate training to maintain their continuous professional development requirements. In terms of newly qualified, we haven't had to look at including stuff in contracts previously because the retention has been so good. But it is something that we can look at going forward, and it is something we will have to consider, I think, because obviously we don't want to invest all of that in training somebody and then them to leave because there's that they can earn a couple of grand more at a neighbouring authority than perhaps we're paying.
Thank you. Yeah, it's perhaps something for the council as a whole. I don't know whether it's something other areas of our council do, but if we've invested a lot of money training someone, we don't want to lose them to Nottinghamshire or anywhere else, you know, or as you say, but now people work from home, then go anywhere in the country. But maybe it's something that if we're not thinking about it, we should be doing. Yeah, thank you. Do we have any more comments? Paul?
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned about shop closures and no seizures. Does that mean that the goods get recycled by their owners, or do they actually get taken out? So, first part of the question.
Where we see stuff, we do try and recycle it as best as we can. There are companies that specialise in taking products and turning them into usable product. For example, there is a company that will take illicit cigarettes and they turn it into a mulch for gardening as a product, so we tend to use them. We have people who will take counterfeit clothing if they can remove the brand because it's sewn on, they will do that. If they can't, then they have specialist equipment to rebrand it, to put their own logos over the top, and they sell those through shops with the proceeds going to charities. So we do try and recycle as far as we can. Alcohol we've sent off to one of the electricity plants for generation, and it's gone into been burnt there to contribute to that. So we do what we can on that front. We try not to send it into landfill if at all possible.
Thank you for that. That's reassuring that it's getting some use. The other bit would be from the proceeds of crime, because that's what these people have been trading as. We hear about the fines, etc. Does it ever get chased back to the proceeds of crime as well?
Yes, where we can identify that there's assets available, which we can't always do. If we do buy in the services of an accredited financial investigator, the one we use currently works for Derby City Council, and she does a really good job of checking any of the financial information that we can find while we're on the premise to see if there is accounts or anything that they can trace back or identify any asset. If we can identify asset, then we can look at what benefit they've had, and we can look to make a confiscation claim against that available asset. But it's not always there available. We do find that money moves in and out remarkably quickly and disappears.
That's brilliant, thank you. Just finally, we've mentioned about product recalls, you know, health and safety issues and the rest of it. Well, that's just legitimate ones. How big is the counterfeit goods on top of that obviously aren't manufactured to standards? Is that a big problem in Lincolnshire?
It's hard to judge. In terms of sort of overt sales through markets and car boots, we've seen a big improvement from the situation 10 years ago when we could have gone out to the East Coast, visited the markets, car boots, and you know, we filled lorries with stuff that we've seized from there. That's very much improved. We don't necessarily see those big seizures anymore. For me, the unknown is what is available online and what people are buying through online platforms. There is a lot of counterfeiting there. There are a lot of safety issues through there, even in products that aren't counterfeited, with incorrect labelling, lack of instructions. It's a bit of a minefield, if I'm honest, and it's certainly something that's been raised nationally and fairly recently by the Chartered Institute. We do hope that some of this can be addressed through the Product Safety and Metrology Bill that is going through Parliament at the moment.
Sorry, I should have asked this at the beginning, Mark. I had to look it up, what metrology means, because some people still might not know what it is.
It's a formal term for weights and measures. So it's all the scales, the products that are sold by weight, any of the equipment that's used.
Thank you. It's the old weights and measures. Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, any more comments from anybody? No. Well, I think that concludes the discussion on this item. And obviously, as we've heard, in future, this will be presented under the 4 work streams. I propose that the committee accepts the report and has been assured on the delivery of the Trading Standards Service in 23-24. Can you please raise your hands if you agree? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. But don't go anywhere, because item 9 is the Trading Standards Food Standards activity for 23-24 on pages 93 to 112, summarising the food standards enforcement activities carried out by the Council's Trading Standards Service during the last financial year. The actions required by us are to review the contents of the report and offer comment on the delivery of food standards work undertaken by the service. It's going to be presented by Emma Milligan, Trading Standards Operational Delivery Manager, and Chad Saratoon, Principal Trading Standards Officer, who will be also providing us with a short presentation. So thank you for your patience waiting through all the meeting, and welcome, and off you go with your report. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So just to start, thank you for introducing me, but the report talks about our food safety work within the year of 2023 to 2024. It details and highlights work around the Food Standards Code, the implications, the requirements, our interventions, complaint work, but also the work we've done with primary authorities, including the fact that we want to change our hourly rate to in line with within the region. It talks about business advice, sampling, and the food safety incidents that we've dealt with. Chad and I really wanted to discuss with you one of our new ways of working today, and how and highlight one of the project pieces of work that we've done, because that's something that we intend to bring into our 2024-2025 regime. So wanted to highlight this to you and show the impact of the work, and how it helps make Lincolnshire a safer and more thriving place to live and work, with well-advised businesses and also well-informed consumers. So here's the project now. Can we click to the next slide? Thank you. So the Food Standards Agency, so the reason that I've just put the slides together is there's quite a lot of data within the report, and thought maybe it's a bit easier just showing some of the pictures and some of the headline data. So the Food Standards Agency issued new voluntary industry guidance on glycerol in slush ice drinks, advising that it should not be sold to children aged 4 or below. The Food Standards Agency assessed the risks and found that children under 4 may suffer from headaches and sickness caused by glycerol exposure. Manufacturers were also advised at this point that they should not be offering retail or advising their retailers that they shouldn't be given free refills, promotions to children under 10. So this was all voluntary, but it also aligned with some cases that were found in Scotland where children were hospitalised because of glycerol intoxication. So while symptoms of glycerol intoxication can usually be quite mild, we felt that it was really important for parents to understand and be aware of these risks. I think we've all seen the slush puppy, the slushies in cinemas and bowling alleys, and particularly the risks when it was at high consumption. Very high consumption of such products can have really severe impacts on children. And talks about if they're having them over a short period of time and drinking a lot of them, it can lead to sort of loss of consciousness and shock, and some of the symptoms that you'll see up on the slides. While glycerol is found in some other foods, it's added at much lower quantities than it is in the slushy ice drinks. Next slide, please. So just want to give you a bit of the data about the work that we did last year. So we visited 34 premises, and again, these are premises that weren't necessarily always visited by Trading Standards, so places like cinemas, soft play, arcades, bowling alleys, and it wasn't just looking at the glycerol, the slushy drinks, it was also looking at things like allergens, weights and measures, general pricing, so anything that was enforced by Trading Standards, we looked at these premises. 97% of those premises offered and sold slush ice drinks, and 100% of them weren't aware of the current food standards guidance. So that was something that our officers talked about with the premises and provided in-depth business advice on. 44% of those premises were compliant on first visit, And another 44 showed minor non-compliances and again were advised and supported by trading standards officers. 9% of the premises that were visited showed major non-compliances and were followed up by further inspections by the trading standards. Can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So we did a lot of consumer and community engagement in this area, so not only with businesses but also with consumers. Here you'll see some of our social media posts that got some great reaches and some great shares within, you know, mums, nursery groups, across businesses as well. And we also prepared a parent-friendly letter to nursery providers around the area of the ice slushy drinks. And we mail-shotted all similar premises that we had on our database. So obviously we didn't visit everyone in Lincolnshire, so we provided them with a mail shot advising them of the new guidance. We also engaged heavily with our partners, such as the district councils, to make sure that they were aware of the visits that we're doing, and also obviously because we cross over in some of the work that we do. So next slide, please. So because of the positive impact that we had from this project, we felt that actually we wanted to, Chad and the team wanted to draw that into this year's sampling regime and this year's sort of food standards plan. So this year the intention is to look at items in school meals, imports of US food, the vegan and plant-based food, and also look at some of our food hygiene with a 2-star and below rating. We'll also incorporate in the standard inspections and sampling into those visits, but it's more about having this business advice approach with also the community engagement and the business engagement within a project plan. So that was really all that we wanted to talk to you about, but any questions, obviously, Chad as the expert is here and the team manager, but yeah, I want to say thank you. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Could I just come in first with a question while we're talking about the slush drinks?
Yeah,
I'm just checking I haven't missed it. Could you just tell me what are premises meant to do? Do they have to put signs up? Do they have to tell... How do they... Yeah, what do they do?
Chad was involved in some of the inspections, so I'll let you want to hand over this one.
Thank you. I think there's nothing specific that they need to do, but the advice is that they provide signage and information where possible, and introduce some sort of policy among their staff that they are sort of cognizant of the age of the children that they're serving, and to advise parents if the product is not suitable for their children, and also to have a control on their levels of refill promotion. So it does come down to the business to enact a good policy to make sure that the children are protected.
It just seems a bit airy-fairy to me. I'm not being blunt about it, but because it does say one drink can be too much, and I'm just wondering what exactly do they have to do? Because you had some major non-compliances when it was. So what is it? What is a major non-compliance?
Oh, in terms of the inspection, the project, we were looking at other food standards issues around glycerol as well. So not just the glycerol drinks. We were looking at the whole food offering that the business provided. So we were looking at things like allergen controls for the other catering that they do. So the non-compliances may not be to do with the glycerol drinks.
So are premises able to access something that gives them clear guidelines? And if a child is under 5, they shouldn't have any, or if a child is 5 to... How do they know what to make their policy?
We've provided them with the advice, and we've provided them with the links and the wherewithal to get to the FSA information. So they have it in black and white in front of them from the FSA.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to give you a hard time.
No,
but
that's okay.
It's all new to me. Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this isn't an uncommon approach, and we do see there's a reluctance to immediately go to legislate to address a problem, and quite often we see this voluntary code of practice that might be introduced, or some sort of measure that's brought in that brings most people into compliance. It doesn't address everything. There's always people who are, just not interested in complying. But the sort of general let the business regulate itself approach isn't something that's uncommon. when new areas are looked at for regulation. So it's something that can continue to be monitored, and obviously if there are ongoing issues that arise, then this is when we have to go back to the FSA and say, this isn't working. You need to look at lobbying to step up the actual approach that people can take on it. But it's a start to the process, and it's been good to engage with it. It's been interesting with the report, and we've had some good feedback on it. In terms of people that have engaged with the information that we've put out. So, it's something we'll continue to monitor, and if we continue to see problems, then that's something that we'll take up directly with national regulators.
Is anything being done to remove glycerol altogether from these drinks if it's the cause of all the problems?
On inspection, a considerable number of the products actually didn't contain glycerol, so I think the manufacturers are already making moves to consider alternative additives that they can use that give the same property to the drink as the glycerol does. So I think it's something that they are aware of, and as long as they can produce a product that's appealing, I guess they'll remove it ultimately.
Thank you. Sorry to hog the limelight. So Liz, I think you're.
Thank you, Chair. Emma, you mentioned on one of your slides we just saw about school meals, school dinners. You're going to be looking at those. I know my daughter ran a business for several years on providing school meals to several schools, and I know she was very closely watched. And I just wondered, are there issues and what's going on? Or do you mean what people get in their lunch boxes that they get from home? Thank you.
So what we're going to look at is a combination of external school meal providers and also in-house school meal providers, and I think the main issue of concern is the control of allergens and dietary requirements. So what we'll be looking at is how the manufacturers are producing the meals in the first place, how they are considering the requests from parents in terms of allergens, and the control of the product once it's made and once it arrives at the school, because in some cases it will arrive at the school and then it's up to the school to then allocate the correct meal to the correct child.
It goes through a lot of hands.
That's right, yeah.
That's the issue.
So there are some control points that need to be looked at, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie is next.
Thank you, Chairman. This is fascinating. Are we still on the slushies, or am I okay to ask a general question, Chairman?
Well, don't let it stop you, Jackie.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. I didn't know about the slushies. I have to go away and read that now. Right, one thing that really concerned me about this was the number of large-scale organisations that are non-compliant. You inspected, on page 101, you inspected 15 supermarkets and 11 were non-compliant. That's huge. And when it came to takeaways, you inspected 63 and 59 were non-compliant. That's awful and it's wrong, but I can understand more why a small organisation would be more likely perhaps to be non-compliant. But with the supermarkets, I just wonder what the excuse is, because, I mean, they've got all the facilities and they would have, the systems to ensure it. And I wonder, is there any way that we would be allowed to have more detail about this? When we say non-compliant, what's that mean? What have they done? What are the risks? I'd really like to know a lot more about these non-compliant incidents. Thank you.
So the non-compliances in this table could be anything from a minor technical non-compliance up to a food standards issue that needs referral to the FSA. However, because it's very difficult to drill down into these current figures, we have started changing the coding that we use to record these issues. So hopefully next year we will be able to provide you with far more detail into what these non-compliances are.
Thank you, Jackie. If I could just come back in with it's Mike in a minute, it'll be with another question, and that's to do with the liaison with district councils, because this is what I often bring up when we come to food, and whether there could be a more structured system of when a district council environmental health officer does a food inspection, that non-compliances that relate to trading standards can automatically come across to us rather than relying on a ad hoc type reference system, which I think is probably what we've got at the minute. Thank you.
I believe we do have a memorandum of understanding with the districts. However, I think it's probably up for review. It's a good time to review it and the way that works. Our lead food officer has a brilliant relationship with the EHOs in the different districts, but as you say, I think some more formalisation might be key.
I know there's something I've asked Mark about every time I think you've been here, because obviously they're doing many more inspections than we're able to do, but they ask about allergens particularly, which is my bugbear. So if anything could be press of a button and it comes over to you, then it saves anything slipping through the net, doesn't it?
Yeah, pressing the button is quite difficult to achieve because we're all using pretty much the same system, but we've all got individual systems, so it can't come across just as a click of a button. In terms of liaison with the environmental health, we're doing a lot more, and certainly within the last few months as we've been preparing for this new food standards delivery model and the updating of the risk assessments through the Food Standards Agency. That's due to be implemented, I think in November. It'll come into our system. We've been looking at records. We've been asking them on a monthly basis for new premise registrations, and we've been looking at our database to sanitise ours really. What we were getting is we would get the new registrations coming through, but we never got the closures. So what's happened is we've got maybe 3 or 4 businesses trading out of the same address where it's changed hands or changed name. It doesn't always change name, but there's a new food business operator there. So we're now able to go back, say this is the most current information for each of those districts. These are the businesses that you should have, and anything that's outside of that we're removing, which is bringing down our number of food businesses that we've got registered and bringing that into line. In terms of the referrals, as Chad has said, Paul has an excellent relationship with them, and where concerns are flagged, we do get notified pretty quickly because they want to go back and do a joint inspection with us, and that happens on a reasonably regular basis. So we do go back to these businesses, carry out joint inspections, we can take some sampling, and we work together on the advice. So yes, we'll look at the memorandum of understanding, we'll get that reviewed and updated, and we'll see how we can perhaps tidy the referral system up. There may be something that we can introduce through web reporting or something along those lines.
Great, that's interesting. Thank you very much. Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. If you can indulge me again, I've got a few questions. I'll give them to you one at a time. I've forgotten, but can you inform me? Do we charge for our food inspections?
No, we don't charge for our programmed food inspections. No, there may be occasion where a business may come to us and ask us to come and assess their food system, and we would charge it at that point. But generally, no. For work that we've decided to do ourselves, no.
Okay. On page 98, items 36 and 37, have we managed to catch up on a number of those inspections?
We try to do as many as we can. That's the honest answer. Is the amount that the code requires us to do in terms of the old risk assessment, it's just physically impossible.
Right.
So we just attempt to do as many as we can.
Thank you. On
yeah, the Food Standard Agency, I think, have recognised their kind of that kind of risk level and association to food premise that needs inspecting has changed, and they've now just published some new guidance about it being what a method that we've adopted certainly over the last 12 months is that intelligence-led picture. So actually, where is the intelligence telling us where we might have a food issue? And then let's go and make sure we target that area. And then, so that's both looking at national, regional and kind of local issues, but using a very evidence-based process, which is kind of the way that the kind of Food Standards Agency are wishing us to take kind of food inspections.
Okay, thank you. On page 100, item 7.5, are you able to give us an example of significant incidents? Because that could cover a multitude of sins.
Yeah, the main type of incident that normally comes to mind is where you have a product that's manufactured outside of the county, which might be available all around the country, and where there is a failure to provide appropriate allergen information. So that would be considered a food incident for the FSA. So it would become our obligation to alert the FSA of the incident for them to take action around the country.
Right, thank you. And again on 110, it's mentioned again and again about retiring officers. I wondered whether the approach has ever been made that when they come towards retiring age or they want to leave, the part-time work is possibly offered where they do 1 or 2 days.
I think the option of flexible retirement is always open and can be discussed with officers who are thinking of retiring. We do find that they quite often just want to make a clean break and just retire, and can't blame them for that. But yeah, it's something we would obviously consider if we had an officer who was approaching retirement age and wanted, or was thinking of retiring and wanted to retire. Retaining their services in whatever shape or form we could do is pretty vital to us.
Okay, thank you for your replies.
Thank you, Mike. Well, as you know, I always have loads of questions. I've got a couple more, if you don't mind. I think everybody else has had a go. I've tried to spread mine out so they're not all together. Regarding the staffing and the comment about an additional 1.5 operatives or officers are needed to match these, to get all these inspections done. Because some of the retired people have obviously, they've left the service after a lot of experience and probably higher salaries, and we've taken on more trainees and people less experienced, I'm assuming they're, and not to make it sound a bit blunt, but they're cheaper. So have we gained in monetary terms to allow us to have more staff?
Yes, and we try to make sure that we are making the best use of the budget that we've got. If we have vacancies, we are trying to fill them as quickly as possible, and we are also making sure that as far as possible we're keeping a full complement of officers that we can afford, and that's based on what we can afford now. Even though it's like I say, they do come in on a grade 5, whereas a fully qualified food officer might be on a grade 8, and we are aware that we may be saving ourselves up a budgetary issue later on to do that. But we're looking at who's likely to leave, when that's likely to happen. Can we bring somebody in now, start them training to replace somebody who may leave in 3 or 4 years' time, when the budget position might be a little tighter, because we're carrying the extra person. So we are, at the moment, we've got one officer who's on a flexible, fixed term contract. We've brought them in to train. We're using some reserve as well as some underspend on staffing that we've had, because we've carried a couple of vacancies for part of this year. So we're just trying to make the best use of the money that we've got and get people in, start them training now. So at least when somebody leaves later on, we've got somebody who's partially trained to step in.
Obviously, this is a matter for the budget setting regarding staffing, but just one other point. In view of the peanuts, and my son has a peanut allergy, and I used to be in catering, and I know all about the dangers of allergens. We are finding peanuts undeclared peanuts in some of these samples, which is really serious. And we've still got a way to go in increasing our inspections, of course. What advice would you give to people with serious food allergies in Lincolnshire when it comes to having a takeaway?
My advice is obviously to communicate with the person that you're making the order from, and to be very clear. You know, if people are going into establishments, contacting establishments, and they're not being asked up front if they've got an allergy, then that is something for me that would be concerning and does need to be reported. And you know, we would always welcome that information because it informs us as to where we can target our resources. And I would say that doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's got an allergen. It can be somebody who's just gone in, because they should be asking everybody when you make contact with them, have you got any allergens? If so, what are the allergens? You know, and they should say then whether or not they can provide an allergen-free meal or they can't provide an allergen-free meal.
Can I just be clear, Mark, on this? So if you ring up to order a takeaway, which lots of us do, the first question should be, do you have any allergies?
It should be part of the discussion. Do you have any allergies?
And if they're not
asking that, then that's something that we need to be notified about, because it is somewhere where we can intervene early on.
I think that's an important thing to go out, because I know of places that have not asked me.
Yeah, well, I went to one. I went to an Indian last night because it was my birthday. I went to an Indian restaurant and I wasn't asked about allergens, so it's something that I will put into our intel as somewhere that perhaps needs to be visited and inspected.
So members of the public, if they order a takeaway and they're not asked, it's something they could report to you.
Yep, definitely, and we would welcome that information.
Thank you. Lovely. Any more questions? No, I think I've asked most of them, but anyway, thank you for your questions and comments. That concludes the discussion on this item, and I propose that the committee has reviewed the report and is satisfied with the delivery of the food standards work undertaken by our Trading Standards Service. Could you please raise your hands if you agree? Lovely, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for bearing with us through that. I think you probably got to stay for another bit, haven't you, a bit later, which we're coming on to now. Item 10. Service level performance reporting against the success framework 24-25 quarter 1. On pages 113 to 138 of the agenda pack, reflecting on the performance achieved in quarter 1 that is relevant to community safety, coroners and registrations, trading standards, fire safety, libraries and heritage, road safety and volunteering. That's why I love this committee. It's so much variety. The actions required by the committee are to review and comment on the performance level performance for 24-25 quarter 1. So instead of inviting everybody to present sections of the report, I'll take it as read and invite members of the committee to ask questions on each section in turn. We have a number of officers in attendance, hopefully to help answer the questions. So we'll start with community safety, pages 113 to 114. Any questions? No? Item 2, coroners and registrations, pages 115 to 116. Do we have anyone here from coroners and right, Martin. I was just going to ask, and it's not in here, but I will ask, the new process for registrations of deaths, which came in this month. I know it's not on here, but I've spoken to people, and obviously there are a few teething issues with it. So perhaps you could give us just a quick update on anything you might have already heard. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. I think it was so the ME process, medical examiner process, came in on the 9th of October, so 2 weeks ago, last Monday. Initial kind of outcomes in the coroner's service has seen some improvements in terms of the volume of referrals of coronial deaths that qualify as coronial deaths. So there's been a reduction in those. So there's clearly been some clear challenge back from the MEs back to GPs or those within hospitals that are certifying deaths, saying no, you can certify this death in the community. It doesn't need to come through to the coronial service. We are seeing some delays within the registration service. So that delay is where the individual has died. We are awaiting for the medical cause of death certificate to be completed and then sent through to the ME, who then sends it through to the registration service, so then we can then book the appointment. So we are seeing around an average, it's taking on average about 10 days for the GP, the ME process, and then through to get through to us. We're still complying with our notice period to date of registration period of 5 days. We're still 98% compliant in terms of that target. So our registration services is meeting its targets, but there are some teething problems with the slight tweaks in the forms, making sure the right form is being used by the GPs, and then having the medical examiners. So at the moment we're just in liaison with CQC and health locally, just to kind of identify what the teething problems are with the GPs, getting those through in a timely fashion so we can get the registration, because it has a huge impact on the bereaved families, because they can't do anything until it comes through to us as registration, so we can book to actually then register the death. And that's where the delay is. So we have had some incidences that we've had to escalate. They've all been resolved, but we are working with GPs, and Councillor Woolley is kind of advocating on our behalf. She's not here, but advocating on our behalf in terms of liaising with CQC and health as well.
Obviously, I'm a funeral celebrant, so I know that was the case, but I just thought it an opportunity for you to put that through, and it is causing delays for the bereaved families, which obviously we don't want that to be the outcome of this. It's meant to speed it up, really.
Yeah, we have, as LCC, have put a lot of information on our coroners and registration sites in how families can kind of escalate it into CQC, and that route to kind of, because it's CQC who then kind of will be in contact with the MEs and also the GPs. So we can't do anything as a registration service until we get the notification. So it's kind of out of our hands, but we're providing guidance through to members of the public on our LCC website if people need a reference point of what and how to do it.
Thank you. And for ME is medical examiner, isn't it? Karen?
Just to say, I'm a bit concerned about that, actually, because bereaved family, for all the obvious reasons, and I wonder if there's a way that we as a committee can monitor or be updated on that. And I take your point about it's on LCC website, but elderly people who've just lost relatives won't necessarily go on LCC's website, and I really would like to see some monitoring, because if you're that old person, you wouldn't know where to turn, would you, and what to do?
Yeah, so we've also lifted the IMPI bot, so the LCC bot that sits on the website that would normally answer somebody's questions. We've lifted that off the registration process, so members of the public will be over the next couple of weeks, whilst we resolve the issues, be able to phone and speak to somebody within CEC, and they will be able to provide them with the advice. So they can get it from both our website, but they also can phone in LCC, and someone will be able to provide them with the answer and the direction as well.
Yes, I agree, Karen. I think it is something that the committee should be kept updated with. And obviously, while I'm here in this, and I know Nigel equally is involved in this, and Karen from the health service. So we're all interested in this, and particularly because it affects everybody in the county at some time or another. One other thing I would perhaps say is that the funeral director is also a really important cog in all of this, because they can often push things through, can't they?
Yes, I'm hoping you as a funeral director will have received something from our office to say this is the process of, and explain that to the bereaved families that you're dealing with as well. So hopefully there's a note. So we are kind of trying to reach all the pinch points to make it happen, and we are also checking on a national level what is being done, but also locally and regionally about is it a national issue, or is it just one for Lincolnshire?
Yeah, Karen, and then Liz, were you going to come in as well, Liz?
This is specifically about that, because I've asked for it to be monitored, and we've said, yes, we need to do that. So can we talk about how we're going to do that, and where the accountability is going to be? Is this going to come back to the next committee? What are we actually going to do?
what can we do, Martin? When can we bring this back?
So I'm very happy to bring it at the next scrutiny meeting. But beyond that, if we get to a resolution before that, I will make sure that you're all briefed on it.
Yeah, I think that's important that we don't just leave it. Is that okay, Tracy, if we put this down for the next one?
Chairman, I was going to suggest we've got Q2 next time round, so whether it could be done as an update for Martin as part of that item.
Which item is it on?
Sorry, the Q2 performance is on the next agenda as well, so whether we could just have it as being an update for Martin included within that.
Yeah,
Do it
that's...
for committee, next meeting.
Yeah, we'll do that. Sorry? Yeah, we might well do. I think we're all interested in this. I mean, me particularly, because obviously I'm involved in an indirect way, but because it does affect us all. So that's why we want to see it sorted.
Yeah, and just to kind of provide some reassurance, we in the registration service kind of recognise it as a risk, so we have been monitoring it for those first 2 weeks, is why we've kind of picked it up and flagged it already. And we've had to step in and resolve a couple of issues with bereaved families, and we are doing that as well. So we have got our own escalation routes in process if they are coming up against brick walls. So yeah, I think we're doing everything we can as a local authority to try and make sure that the issues are raised both nationally and locally with the right CQC and kind of liaisons in with GPs, and hopefully we'll see the situation improve, and we'll bring back either certainly report to Q2, but we'll maintain through Councillor Woolley updates to you as how we're progressing on that.
Thank you, and we'll include that then, as we'll list that on the agenda as part of that item. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. And I say it wasn't in this report, but I knew I had to bring it up because it's just happened. So lovely. Right, so any more questions for coroners and registration? No. So the next one is trading standards, page 117 to 118. I think we've worn you out, Mark and Chad. So fire safety, 118 to 129. Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 123, it lists on high-risk sleeping. The actual number of inspections has been 33, but the target figure is 296. Could somebody give us a bit of an explanation on that one? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that's the annual target of 296, and that will be over a 12-month period. So that's the number we'd expect to complete over a 12-month period, whereas the high-risk non-sleeping is 64 over a 2-year period, which is in the line below. So we're currently on track to achieve that. So our team will prioritise the risk assessments based on the time since the last one. So they may not do them proportionally as per 1/12 of the 296 per month, if you like. They will prioritise the risk assessments they've got in a time order, because there is a possibility that within that 12 months we could visit the same premises twice within a year, in effect, because we're trying to do it in a financial year period.
Okay, thanks for that. And on page 128. It's on the petroleum licensing inspections. We've got an actual 10, but there was no target figure shown. Was there a target figure, but it's been missed, or doesn't it need anything on that particular item?
There should be a target figure there. Let me confirm what that is, and I'll make sure it comes back to the next meeting, or I can circulate it outside the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next section is libraries and heritage, 129 to 133. I have a question on this. The visits to the library website and the community use of libraries both have achieved more than double their targets. So do the targets need revisiting and increased and be increased? So do we have anyone to comment on that? We're online, I think, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, we've got James Sharples online who can answer that.
Yeah, hello. I'm here representing libraries and culture. I'm happy to take that back to the client lead, who can subsequently take that to GLL through the contract. But I know they have been performing very well, because there's been quite a strong push with the online presence, with the app that's been launched, which I think has been reported at the 28,000 downloads. But I'm happy to take that back to the client lead.
Thank you very much. Karen, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point because my local library hub, it's amazing and we've got much improved hours, but I do want to point out it's not because LCC have put more money into it, it's actually because we've got UKSPF money and we can now open, I think we're opening like 4 days a week or something. So, you know, I would temper some of the patting ourselves on the back with that alongside it, because I still think that Lincolnshire County Council could put much more money into libraries.
Lovely, thank you, Karen. Any more questions on that section? Oh, Liz.
It wouldn't be a meeting if I didn't bring up Pinchbeck Library and Hub, because Pinchbeck Community Hub and Library is just so, it's an exemplar for the county. And I've yesterday got an email to say we've actually won an award from it's run by the Parish Council, Community Libraries Network 2024 Awards, and we've won that. And it's just, you know, it's just the heart of the village, and the library is so well used. And the hub, I was talking earlier about Links Digital, they're there, but that's just one of the myriad of organisations we have coming in. And you know, if you haven't got a community hub, I feel sorry for you all. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and since we're all trying to get mention of our own community hubs, I mean, Karen always manages to get hers in, but Heckington is also equally as good and valued in our village, so I'm sure we'd all agree with that. So anybody else want to mention their library hubs? But no, that's fine, thank you. Right, so road safety, pages 133 to 135. Now, I've just got we have got Stephen lurking at the back there. I saw you earlier. I just want to ask you about, and this obviously now is obviously a serious matter, and that's the serious injuries and deaths in Q1. They've gone up. I've just been looking back over the years. They've gone up and down, but considering April, it's from April, isn't it, when the better weather really is here, and Q4 is probably up the worst of the months. We don't seem to be much better as the better weather comes, and it's a bit disappointing. And I notice around Heckington, where I live, we've had some very serious accidents, a whole slew of them. So it just seems to me that it's getting worse. Perhaps you could just comment on that, Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. I think 2023 we had the lowest number of people killed and seriously injured on record since 2017, but the changes that we've been seeing have just been marginal reductions. And then as we've gone into 2024, we've had an increase in the number of fatalities, and it may well be that that is also reflected in serious injuries as we start to record that data going through. On a one-year rolling average, so up to the end of July, we were 1.7% higher this year than the previous year, but that actually only equates to 7 collisions. So of course, what I think I'm trying to say is we're about where we have been in the last few years. So there might be the appearance that it's got worse, but it hasn't yet filtered through. It's certainly something that we're monitoring though, because as you've highlighted, that quarter wasn't as low as previous similar quarters. Also in terms of the children's side of things as well. The numbers, as you say, they go up and down, they're broadly similar, but we always keep an eye on any emerging trends.
And I don't want to say the place, it is near to where I am, but there's been 2 accidents in the same place, and then you get a lot of people asking something needs to be done about this junction or that place. And what do you actually do if there is a serious injury or a death? How does the Road Safety Partnership get involved with the police in actually pinning down what happened and what could be done to make sure it doesn't happen again?
So there's a range of different actions that can occur at different times depending on what's happened. So the biggest thing that we do every year is what we call our cluster run, and that's analysing every single injury collision that's happened in the last 5 years, regardless of severity, and then ranking all of the locations that come up, and it can be from, I don't know, 20 in the last 5 years down to 0 or 1. We'll then take the top ones, the top 30 for sure, and start looking at what the issues are at those particular locations and what actions can be taken. But we also review and monitor a significant number more than that and share those with our highways colleagues too. If there was, I think, just one collision happening in isolation, then the Forensic Collision Investigation Team of Lincolnshire
police who are based at the Road Safety Partnership feed into us the initial circumstances that they put down on the Stats 19 form, which is the form for every collision. We then share that within the Road Safety Partnership and within highways and consider if there's any immediate areas of concern. Very often it's going to be driver error, and so it may well be that quite quickly we know that it isn't something to do with the road, for example, but it's a thematic issue that we're already addressing. Could be drink and drug driving, or it could be speeding. When you then start to get more than one in a location, that's when it kind of probably comes up onto our radar where it's not already being identified in a cluster run, and we're looking again for themes, so similar types of collisions that are happening because of a certain causation factor. The reality is a collision of any severity can happen at any point on the road network, and often it's just a question of luck. So we've got to be a bit more evidence-based than that and try and make sure that these things are brought to us early so we can start to look at themes or similar causation factors and then take action.
I'm going to bring Karen in a minute, but can I just ask you, is any of this information able to be shared with us? Because we obviously, I've had several people approach me about what can be done at this particular place, but I never really know what the investigations have shown up. Can any of that information be shared?
So when it comes to fatal collisions in the early months, it's going to be difficult other than a general overview, because a full forensic investigation is going to be occurring, and as you know, will often end up either at the coroner's court or at Crown Court. For any other collision, we can give the Stats 19 information, we can give the basic overview. What often happens, as you highlighted, Chairman, is that there's community concern, and that happens quickly, and they want a quick answer, and that the initial information will show that there was nothing that could have been done to prevent it other than the way in which the driver had behaved at the time. So then it becomes really difficult around providing community reassurance without giving away information that might impact on the investigation that we're not allowed to. So those initial days or months can be difficult to provide the level of detail that might be required, although it will come out in due course. But wherever we can, anything that's in a Stats 19 form, we can share that with councillors.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an observation, and this really isn't a criticism, but what I found as a local councillor, I had a lot of people coming to me saying that people speed like Merry Hell down Woodhall Drive. And what I found was that getting the evidence to meet the criteria to bring the speed limit down is almost impossible, Steve. And I've got all these people saying to me, you know, you've got to do something about it. And it's really hard because you've got to have X number of cars going X number of miles an hour in a certain period. And really, ultimately, bringing a speed limit down to 20 miles an hour doesn't cost a lot of money, but it would have offered community reassurance. And I'm not really clear what all the reasons are that for, but people do say it's really difficult to get things done. And I don't think for a minute it's not that anyone doesn't care or anything like that, but I found it really difficult to do that. People are saying, you know, their cats are getting run over all the time and they fear for the kids and that. But when I tried to do something about it, I found it really hard. And I never did get the speed limit down on that location.
Thank you, Councillor. Probably touches on a few issues, some of which I'm not responsible for. So Lincolnshire County Council, as you know, sets speed limit, not the Road Safety Partnership. So I can't really comment on whether it would have been appropriate to consider reducing it. What I can say is that the traffic management policies of Lincolnshire County Council are going through Scrutiny Panel B at the moment, and I understand that document is nearing completion, and that may offer some different guidance on the implementation specifically of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits as well. But I think when it comes to speed, part of the problem is just because the community think it's a good idea doesn't necessarily always mean it is. So I hear day in, day out constantly, as you would imagine, that there are speeding problems outside my house, in my village, on my street, or whatever it may be. We then assess it and we look at the collisions, we look at the speeds of vehicle, we look at the number of types of vehicle going through, and we show factually and evidentially that there is not a speeding problem and it's not accepted. Our data is wrong, or it's being manipulated, or we're not listening, or the point is we don't have the resource to enforce, for example, every single street or road or village in this county. So we have to take a risk-based approach. The government believes that casualty reduction is the tool that speed cameras should be used for, and we comply with the guidance, the national guidance on the use of speed cameras. So I think that the answer is sometimes a community has a perception, but it's not borne out in reality, but it doesn't change how they feel. So I know we've worked on community speedwatch signs, for example, as an alternative, or trying to set up community speedwatch groups, because if it is a perception issue as opposed to a factual issue, then there's things that we need to do differently to try and make them feel safe.
I take your point, but when people's cats are being killed, then it's not just a perception, it is happening. Although in fairness, I've not seen speeding, but I get told all the time that it's happening. But what you're saying is exactly right.
But my point would be a 24-hour, 7-day radar which detects the speed of every single vehicle against one person's cat being run over. One of them is factually, evidentially based. One of them is an animal that could run out in front of any vehicle at any time. There is no science that I'm aware of that equates a cat being hit with the speed of a vehicle that's hit it. I'm not trying to dismiss.
It is a lot of cats. It's impacted so much that our cat, I was going to get one, but I won't have one because they get run over.
I had three cats as a kid, and they all got run over. But that doesn't mean that people were speeding when it happened. It's not the same. So I want to be really clear on this. So I'm not dismissing people's thoughts on losing a family pet. As I say, it's happened to me. It's horrific. But I don't think we can use that as a measure of whether someone's speeding. So that's a really good example, though, Councillor, is that you did tell me about that, and because of the concerns of their cats being run over. And we did the surveys, and the surveys showed that people weren't generally speeding on that road. I think that's the only
If I
process
could
that we
just
can do.
sort of come in, because this is something I've been interested in since I've been a councillor, and it's come up a few times. When people are in their house stationary and cars are going past, there is this perception, I know, that they're going quicker than what they are, which is probably one argument. But the other thing is, when you do your speed survey, you always concentrate, because I think you have to by law, on the average speed. And it's not maybe the average speed that kills the cat. It's the outlying ones who, I was going to say the word boy racer, which isn't fair really, but it's people who are speeding outside the mean average.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate the opportunity to explain what data is considered when we do the surveys as well, because I think that is one of the misconceptions, that we only consider mean speeds. And I think that's primarily because when we try and feed back to residents, for example, when they've made a complaint, is that there's so much data it can get a bit complex, so we try and simplify it. But actually what we're looking at is every single vehicle that has travelled through there. We're looking at volume, we're looking at mean, we're looking at 85th percentile speeds, we're looking at number and percentage exceeding the speed limit, we're looking at number and percentage exceeding it by different groups. So for example, within a diversionary course group, or at a notice of intended prosecution level, we're looking at high speeders at 20 mile an hour and above. So all of that data is being assessed and analysed when we make our decisions as to whether some sort of enforcement action should be taken. So it isn't just mean speeds, although I am aware that that can sometimes seem to be the case.
I was just wondering on the impact of that. Obviously, we've got several villages and parish councils, community speed groups. We've got lots of signs coming on. How helpful is that? Do we have any data to show whether that reduces down, or could you share that with us, please, Steve?
I think first and foremost, Community Speedwatch is a fantastic initiative that is allowing communities to make a difference for themselves, regardless of the data and whether there's a problem or not. I think that the use of passive and interactive signs have been shown, because we've done surveys before and after, to reduce the number of people exceeding the speed limit where there have been people exceeding the speed limit. I also think they're just good for making the community feel better, because they know that drivers are going to at least have some sort of reminder of what the speed limit is in areas where you couldn't otherwise have repeater signs, or an interactive sign to directly target those individuals. So I think it has worth from that perspective as well. I also think that when speed monitoring or enforcement by Lincolnshire Police is then done on the back of that, that people are going to be hard pushed to say that they didn't know what the speed limit was or they hadn't been given that advice and guidance as well. I think long term, if you leave the passive signs or the interactive signs in the same places, people are going to get sign blind after a while. So that's why part of the guidance is to move them about. But I do think they have a real impact in helping communities feel safe and reducing the speed of vehicles.
Thank you. And if I could just say one more on this, because this has occupied a lot of my time. East Heckington, which is on the A17, we wanted a reduction in speed there for a long time around the garages that are on that main part of the road there, and we have had it. It's now been reduced to 40, and I've noticed that the vehicles are going more slowly. They might not all be doing 40, but you can tell it's had an effect, and I've actually spoken to people in that area, and they've said, yes, you can tell they're not as quick. So it can work, and that's a credit to everybody involved in that project. We've been wanting it a long time, and all the evidence has been gathered exactly as you said. So thank you. Just one other point, and that is the speed indicator devices which the parish councils have. They are very expensive, and obviously it's a big investment for a parish council. They all seem to do their own thing. I just wonder whether in the future, whether some group purchasing opportunity might be a good idea to get the price down, particularly for the smaller parishes who it's a massive investment for them. And I don't know whether that's something that could be considered, as I say, in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, where applicable, we do try and link up parishes, or obviously parish meetings as well often, because again they're likely to have even less money, so that they can look to either share the purchase costs of equipment or the use of equipment, but also when they're doing vehicle monitoring, where they have community groups doing that as well, because sometimes they feel more comfortable doing that monitoring in their a different parish than they do within their own community. So we do try and make that liaison happen. I think what we're also looking to do when there is funding available is to try and maybe purchase some signs that could be used at areas where there is evidence of high speeding, where there's been requests through a community speed watch. So I will provide an update on that hopefully when that progresses.
So when I said group purchasing, I meant where we can get a cheaper price for people to buy them, if you know what I mean, rather than sharing them. I know parishes do share, some of mine do, but it's not always easy to do that. It means fetching and carrying and everything. But I meant a price, we could get a cheaper price for them as an authority.
Thank you. Yeah, because they're bought and owned by the communities themselves and not by the authority, we've always asked that they go directly, and we did look into whether or not we should purchase them first from us and then they buy it. Sorry, we should purchase them first, then they buy them from us. It was a good few years ago, and I cannot remember the reason why we didn't go down that line. I'd have to look back into it and feed back to you, Councillor.
Thank you. If it could just be looked at again, and even if it's reason why we can't do it, I just think it might be worthwhile for the smaller parishes particularly. Thank you. Right, anything else on that section? Final section then, and Lee's been sitting there patiently. Volunteering, page 135 to 137. I'll just ask you a question then, Lee. And that's on the training courses that are available for volunteers. I know at one of the previous scrutiny meetings, it became apparent that there are a number of training opportunities, and it's just getting that message out to the other across the county so that voluntary organisations can make better use of them. So any comment on that? Thank you.
Yeah, so as we've discussed before, they offer a whole range of training courses that are well used. So that's everything from the kind of general governance of a voluntary organisation through to some quite specific things, safeguarding provisions as examples. That is promoted quite heavily through the newsletters that are sent out, and there's a growing number of recipients to that. I think over 2,000 organisations now receive the newsletter on a regular basis. And as a result of the merge between the two VCS organisations, the database has grown backed up by the new volunteering platform and the CRM behind that. VCS and LCVS are using that more in a more targeted way to promote the training offer. As we discussed previously, the training isn't all necessarily there to be accredited. So some of this is about pathways into different different opportunities, and it can be that stepping stone towards employment or to help communities to thrive. So it isn't all accredited training. What we have seen, and I think we touched upon this at the annual report, was that the pathways to volunteering training that was being offered at Boston College has been successful. That's now been extended out, and that is going to be offered by a further 2 colleges to help people move into volunteering opportunities. And again, that then builds the kind of further training provision that comes through. There is also some work that's starting to build around DWP and DWP's revised set of ambitions for how they get people back into the workplace, and again the use of volunteering and training for that. I can take away an action to work with Ben to promote further, and that's certainly something we can look at through our communication channels as well. But the information they provide on a quarterly basis shows that training provision is being well utilised.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, anything else that can be done, I'm sure will be. I've been trustee of quite a few things, and I wasn't really aware of quite the breadth of some of that training, so that would be very useful. Anything else on that then? Lovely. Well, I think that concludes the discussion on that item, and I propose that the committee accepts the report and records its satisfaction with the Public Protection and Community Service level performance for Q1 of 2024-25. Could you please show, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. So, I think we're on the last one now. Item 11, the work programme on pages 139 to 144, the work programme for 24-25. And we're going to hear now from Tracy, Senior Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one item to report as an amendment to the work programme, a report on the Greater Lincolnshire Coronial merger, update on the commissioning of a post-mortem contract at Lincoln has been added onto the next agenda for the 12th of November. This now means we have 5 items for the November meeting. These are the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue attendance of flooding incidents, which is up to March 2024, the Q2 service performance, so we'll include the update we mentioned earlier. And then sitting as the Crime Disorder Scrutiny Committee, there will be a report on the Lincolnshire County Council and Lincolnshire Police Safer Together Partnership Agreement, and an exempt pre-decision scrutiny item in relation to domestic abuse safe accommodation recommissioning. And from today's meeting, I'll liaise with Mark Baxter in relation to the LFR update on the culture change in about 12 months' time. And I'll liaise with Martin and Mark Keel about the new trading standard reports and when to schedule those in for. But otherwise, welcome any suggestions. Thank you, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you, Tracy. Anybody got anything to add? Jolly good. Well, that concludes that item, and I propose that we approve the existing work programme as detailed on pages 139 to 144, subject to those extra things that Tracy's just mentioned. So could you all just show if you're happy with that? Thank you very much. So that concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you for coming, and just a special thank you to Emily and Tracy for all their help and support in making this meeting happen. Thank you both very much. Thank you, everyone.